Another season is upon us. Freshmen arrive wide-eyed with dreams of future glory, while seniors prepare for their last chance at immortality. There are only a handful of these opportunities in a man's life, a handful of chances to distinguish yourself from the rest. It's on these fields where history is made, where legends begin and heroes triumph. Traditions tell the story of what you represent, of those that forge the legacy you uphold. When you come charging out of the tunnel, 100,000 people will be watching your every move. How you respond to that pressure is what defines you. These are the moments that reveal your toughness, your determination, and your pride. The Roughnecks on the Sooner Schooner. Ralphie charging out of the gate. And Chief Osceola planting his spear. The time has come. Your time is now.
You know, boys, it's a little bit frustrating to me when the discourse over the last 24 hours is we have the worst sports day in America right now. But that can't possibly be true because tonight we have ourselves the exclusive home of 7+ hours of commercial-free college football live show tonight covering one of the premier conferences in the country. I'm joined by my co-host, Reed Napper, as well as AT from Tampa 2 College Football. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Doing great.
We got March Madness going on, but we get to talk the real game, the real sport, college football. I mean, what's better than that?
Yeah, the story of the Big Ten right now is, you know, they might have 6 teams in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA March Madness, but they also might have the best conference in college football.
Yeah,
I don't know. That might be up for debate here. That might be up for debate.
It is debatable.
Yeah, I mean, that might be something where I need to get the judge gavel out, and we might need to explore that further. But guys, welcome everybody to the College Football live show. Talking about the Big Ten tonight. It's been a pleasure talking about the group of 6 and diving into every single G6 team going into the 2026 football season as we enter the spring window. But now we get into the big dogs, and we got some big dogs, and we got some burning questions that you guys have here tonight as well. And I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead and do a couple things for me real fast. Make sure you hit that like button, but then also hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on another platform, Twitter and Twitch, for example, first of all, thank you for doing that. You know, you are the real MVP, as Kevin Durant always said. But at the same time as well, make sure you hit the follow button over here as well. I'll truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. But with that being said, gentlemen, not only is the Big Ten the center of the basketball world right now, leading with the most teams remaining in March Madness, but with everything that's happened the last few years in college football, in the past, we've seen the SEC dominated, no questions asked. But after what we see in the past few years, not saying that the Big Ten has surpassed the SEC, but I do think after what we've seen in this NIL era, I think it does at least merit the conversation. Don't you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. Mr. SEC, you tell me.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm Mr. SEC, but I definitely will defend the SEC until I die. So I don't know what that makes. But no, I mean, I'm not going to hate on the Big Ten. They've done a great job. I think they know exactly what they need to do to be good. Just add more teams. How many teams do we have in the Big Ten now? And I feel like we're going to be at 20 before it's all said and done, or maybe even more. So they're definitely making a super conference over there. But yeah, they are kind of the cream of the crop right now when it comes to winning championships. And so as an SEC fan, as a dog, it kind of sucks, but you just got to give them respect where respect's due, and they're dominating. So.
Yeah, last time I checked, the SEC doesn't have a T-shirt with 3 reigning champions from the same conference. National champions, I might add. 3 reigning national champions from the same conference.
Yeah, that's yeah, you're right, and it's cool. I mean, they're dominating across the sport. I mean, they're best of their best, but their bottom tier, their bottom tier is pretty bottom tier too. So
I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. Yeah,
yeah, and it is very interesting that you point that out, because something that I always hate in terms of the discourse is using just national championships in terms of who is the best conference, right? Because you're eliminating essentially 90% of the conference for both leagues when you're trying to make that argument. Because for me in the Big Ten, it's not just because of the fact that we have seen the Big Ten win a national championship 3 years in a row, including 4 national championship participants. If you want to lump Washington in there from the 23 campaign, but then also the middle tier has stepped up as well. And I think it's helped that the Big Ten West has dissolved. And what has done as a result of that is your Iowas is a perfect example of that. We have seen more infrastructure added in terms of resources and less of complacency in terms of settling for average and trying to reach that at least above average to good tier to help bring at least the middling part of the Big Ten at least to a higher level.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest, I guess the craziest thing coming out of the Big Ten is the whole Indiana story. I mean, that's the one that it makes the Big Ten feel like they're dominant when you've got a team like them winning. And it's tough to say, and this is not a dig at the Big Ten, but is it really like a Big Ten thing, or is it just Kirk Cignetti? It's kind of the same across the board with Indiana. Everybody likes to act like Indiana's spending all kinds of money and that's why they're winning. And really, it's not. I mean, they're just winning because of him. So I feel like that was just a fantastic hire. And if the Big Ten continues to add the stat, I will say one thing about them. It feels like they've got the best staff across the board in college athletics. And I think that's obviously why we're seeing them kind of rise to the top. I think that the SEC did a really good job of that in the early 2000s and 2010s era. But now I feel like the Big Ten's really taken over with staffing well, and ADs are doing a good job of that. So if they continue to have good staff, then they're going to continue to dominate, in my opinion. So
yeah, completely piggybacking off of that, AT. That was the point I was going to make. I feel like the Big Ten, top to bottom, is a very well coached conference.
Yeah,
not saying the SEC is not, but I'm saying top to bottom, you could probably bet bottom dollar that the Big Ten's coaching ranks probably are at least the middle pack of the Big Ten. You could probably compete with the bottom half of the SEC, I would say, for coaching staffs wise. So I think I hear this a lot on Twitter that the Big Ten is, the conference of coaches. The coaching staffs in this conference are what make it so competitive in my eye. So totally agree with that.
For the ADs as well, just finding the diamonds in the rough and that kind of thing. So I mean, the SEC's got to do a better job of that. I think the SEC got a little bit too political in a lot of their hiring, and just trying to find the guy that fits instead of the guy that can win. And I think that Big Ten's like looking at kind of outside looking in, just saying, "Hey, we just want winners here," and they'll kind of fit the program to what they want it to be. So they've done a really good job of that for sure.
Yeah, and I will say, I think while it does merit the conversation, while I certainly don't want to go as far as the Big Ten has definitively surpassed the SEC, and why it's just meriting the conversation is you're still looking at in terms of the bottom half or the bottom third of your conference. I still think the SEC has an advantage over the Big Ten. Arkansas was a team last year that didn't win a single SEC game, but with the way that Arkansas played and their style of football, you would still probably take them over a Purdue, for example, or an Oklahoma State, or whoever you would like to toss in, Stanford, I guess, like over in the ACC. So comparing the SEC's bottom third compared to the other conferences, I still think the SEC has the best bottom tier out of everyone of the power conferences.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's kind of what keeps the SEC in the conversation, because I think from their bottom ranked teams are would be really good in the Big 12, to be completely honest, would be pretty solid in the ACC, And I think that they would be, they would probably be top 14 or so in the Big Ten, just depending on the year and the teams they pull. But yeah, I totally agree with that, Jake. I think the Arkansas, the Kentuckies, the Vandy. Well, Vandy was really good this last season, but I think they have a chance to win more games in other conferences. So,
yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how we rank these teams, because why I feel that it's a little bit more interesting to see how we rank these teams because of the number of teams that we have in this conference. We're talking about an 18-team conference, and even though the Big Ten has played 9 conference games for quite some time, you're still talking about ducking about 50% of your conference in any given season. So it certainly is a possibility where even in your own conference, you have a massive disparity in scheduling. And I know that's something that we talked about offline is, what we would do to fix college football. I don't know about you guys, but an 18-team conference, it is simply, that is way too much what we have going. And I think we're going to see some extreme discrepancies when it comes to how these conference schedules shake out for all of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, for just throwing an example out there, Northwestern getting a bye week in week 2 to then play 11 straight games, like no other team in Power 4 has that, I believe. No other team in Power 4 has that. So it's absolutely ridiculous. And then just on the complete opposite spectrum, you get Ohio State, who I don't even know the combined record of the teams from last season, but it's head and shoulders above the rest of the conference schedule. So there needs to be variance, and that only will come with a reduced, sample size of teams. So, and one of our own, Colton, I think did a great job of his realignment of how he would, put teams in different conferences, keep the Big Ten at 10 teams. He put Penn State as an independent. As a Penn State guy, I love that. So I think it only would come with a reduced amount of teams, to get a better variance in schedule. But yeah, to go 11 straight games versus Ohio State that has the gauntlet they do is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. I mean, why did they screw Northwestern, man? What were they trying to do there?
David Braun did too good in year 1. I don't know what he did too good,
man. Insane. They go out and they make a good offensive coordinator hire. They're like, all right, we got to make sure they don't win a game.
Yep. Up. We get a quarterback. Got to punish him. Yeah, exactly.
Insane.
They definitely have to, especially like Northwestern. They care about those academics up there too. Like that travel schedule. It's really gonna mess with the the academics as well for for Northwestern in particular. I thought this was an academic conference, but look at what has happened to our beautiful sport. And the thing about Northwestern that's really fascinating as well is you touched up on is having that week 2 and week 3 bye. That's the only bye that they're going to get as well. If it was last year, they would have at least had maybe another bye and maybe talking about, they're only going to have to go 6 to 7 games in a row instead of 10s. But because there's only one bye, I mean, that's a particularly tough break for the Northwestern Wildcats. And I'm certainly feeling for them.
Yeah, that sucks. And just where it lands for them. I mean, just no break. They just got to go 10 straight, and it's going to be a lot of conference games. I mean, that's when they get into their conference schedule. They got a lot of hard road. It's going to be a gauntlet for them. I like them as a football program, but I think they got a rough schedule. So,
yeah, it's not even like that bye week favors them either, because South Dakota State bye week, Colorado, Indiana, Penn State.
Yeah,
like it doesn't even help them.
Like if you could get it after that Penn State game, you get your kind of first slate through. That'd be way better, But instead, you get it right. You get it right. You get it when you want your guys to be playing. To be honest, like your guys are still fresh. Those first couple weeks, like you really don't want to have a bye there unless you got a really big team coming in or something like that. So yeah,
But hey, man, so for those of you that are familiar with our spring first look series, so I'm going to go ahead and draw up the big board. So Reed, AT, and I, we were talking about this ourselves, because this conference is so massive, the bigger monitor is in service. So if I'm looking to the side a lot more often, is because how I normally have things set up on my end. It's a little bit inverted because of the size of this conference, and hopefully when the day comes where we do have a college football commissioner, and maybe it's someone from his channel, because we actually care about more than just the big brands. Just wanted to throw that out there. we could get some of this under control. But for right now, we have 18 teams that we're going to rank, and we are going to start from the bottom. We're going to work our way up until we get to our number one teams. Boys, you ready to conquer this monstrosity for the live stream here tonight?
I hope you two have a drink. I do, so I'm gonna need to take a sip every few teams.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, it might be like to the point where like we're getting towards the the end tonight, and like it's the consequential like SpongeBob when he's like in like saying these like land domes like water. I need water. But hey, let's go ahead and get things started, and I'm gonna go ahead and kick things off. I'm gonna start from the bottom, and I'm curious if you guys feel the same way that I do as well. So my number 18 team does have to be the Purdue Boilermakers. And this is no knock on Barry Odom necessarily. I think if he is given enough time, I think Barry Odom is going to be able to turn this thing around. And he's going to have a heck of a football program, similar to what Jeff Brom has done before he took the Louisville job. That being said, the difference between last year and this year is I think what we saw last year for the most part is that this Purdue football team is essentially what happens when you take your average G5 football team and you drop them into the Big Ten. That was Purdue in a nutshell, right? This year, I do think the talent has improved tremendously, at least to the point where there's an expectation where, at least in some of their games, they're expected to be competitive versus you're hoping that they're competitive in some of their games. I like their addition that they added to Elo Mendoza in particular. That was a big add, getting the edge rusher out of Georgia. I think that's someone that will start on that Purdue defense right away. But then they also added a couple of other interesting players as well. Mr. Clark, for example, he transfers in from FIU. Absolute ball hawk from the Conference USA. 3 interceptions, 13 passing breakups last season. So the dude was flying all over the field for FIU last season. They also added an all-conference punter in Dylan Drennan from Buffalo. So the special team should be pretty good. And then they returned Manny Powell as well as a third-team all-conference linebacker in the Big Ten. So there's some pieces now in place for Barry Odom. But with the loss of Nitro Tuggle and Hank Parvis, it's going to be tough for them, I think, to consistently generate offense, especially trying to replace Nitro Tuggle's production.
Yes, Mississippi Red Zone. Woo!
Yes. Mrs. CEO right there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, AT.
Okay. Yeah, I'm right here with you. I'm right here with you, Jake. I got Purdue sitting number 18. I mean, not to step on all the points you just made. I do like Barry Odom. I think he's a good coach. But I'm not hype on them. And they had a really bad season last year. I think that they will be better. I think they'll improve, but improving, they're the type of team that, they've got nowhere to go but up. So I feel like they're just, they lost some key pieces. Hank Purvis, I know you mentioned him. They do have their quarterback back, but it wasn't just like he was out there, playing really, really well. So it's going to be a tough season for him. I like Barry Odom, but yeah, I think they're kind of the bottom tier of the Big Ten right now. So
Ditto. Not much to add. Got Purdue, bottom of the barrel. Not going to beat the Horsewads down though. Losing your top 3 receivers. Ryan Brown, returns at quarterback. Not a lot to talk about through more interceptions than touchdowns last season. Yeah, Purdue. I think they'll win a game or two within Big Ten play because these bottom 3-4 teams are kind of all on the same plane in my eyes. But yeah, I think defensively they'll take a step up for sure. That linebacker group, headlined by Elo Mendoza again, is going to be the standout of the defense. And Mr. Clark, Don Sanders, Justin Denson Jr. from Michigan State, Jaden Mangum from Michigan, all got notable game time last season. So I think their defense is going to be the standout. It's just, can they step up offensively? Who knows? But Purdue's bottom of the barrel, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I will say this about Purdue and Barry Odom in particular. He does have them going in the right direction. I know a couple of years ago, I think they only won one singular game, and that was an FCS matchup. At least this time around, they did beat an FBS team. So this Purdue team is already trending in the correct direction. Maybe to where, maybe we see them win 3 or even 4 games, like you suggested. Definitely imagine they'll probably win at least a couple in non-conference play. But if they can win 4 games or even more than that, I think that's a successful season under year 2 under Barry Odom, given the current talent level.
Yeah, it's tough for them to recruit. I mean, it's just they're kind of in a bad spot, to be honest. I don't think it's really a testament to Barry Odom being a bad coach or anything. It's just that they've got to prove themselves first before the recruits come in and before they get noticed. Unfortunately, some guys can kind of sell it beforehand, and it's really hard to do that at Purdue. So, great basketball school though. Love to watch them in March, but come November, you're not seeing much.
Yeah, it also doesn't help when the state was being ran by Notre Dame for a long time, and now your arch rival ascended to the stratosphere of college football. So that doesn't help you either. But again, I think Purdue will at least be more competitive this season in Big Ten play. They could win 1 or 2 at a minimum Big Ten games this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe still a basketball school for right now, but the football is getting a little bit better. But I do think that, at least from this point on, I don't think that we're going to have consensus between the 3 of us. So I know that we haven't had Mr. SEC, allegedly, around for a little bit. So, I'm going to pose this to you, AT. When you're looking at, the rest of the Big Ten, who's that team that you have as your number 17 when you were looking at this conference from more of a holistic standpoint?
I'll be honest, this is tough too. There's so many teams in this conference. It's tough. Like, I feel like the 15s to the 18s can all kind of be interchangeable. Same with like the 14 to the 10 and so on and so forth. But right now sitting at number 17, I've got Michigan State. I think they're going to be a good football team next year, but they just lost so much. And they lost their quarterback, lost wide receiver, lost Mekhi Frazier, Aiden Childs, Nick Marsh, lost some guys on the defensive line as well. I'm just not excited about him. I think Pat Fitzgerald is a good coach. I think he's okay. But I just think that they lost too much, and it's just going to be interesting to me to see kind of where they're going to go from here. So I think they're kind of under the same boat to me as a Purdue team. I just don't know enough about them right now. They didn't have a great season last year. We're going to see it's going to be fresh legs there, fresh meat, I guess to say, but I'm not excited about them. I don't know what to expect. And so that's kind of why I've got them, bottom of the barrel here right now. So
I am at least a little higher on Michigan State. I've got him at 15. I think Pat Fitzgerald is going to have a solid year in year 1. Again, he has to get used to the NIL era because he hasn't coached since pre-NIL era. But I think their additions in the portal are gonna be solid. They're gonna be effective to at least get Michigan State some wins in Big Ten play this season. Sorry, I'm pulling up their roster again. But again, Michigan State I think is heading in the right direction with Ryan Fitzgerald. They're finally aligned from the top down with AD now in the football program with Fitzgerald at the helm. I think they're not gonna take the world by storm like in Indiana with Cignetti in year 1. I'm not expecting that at all. But I think they're at least going to be heading in the right direction. The standout transfer is Cam Edwards from UConn at running back, over 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns last season for the Huskies. He's going to be the standout on offense. Aiden Childs is out the door, so it's kind of what's the plan at quarterback. Alessio, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name. Alessio is back at quarterback. 10 touchdowns, 3 picks, 1,200 yards through the air last season. So they do bring in Cam Fancher from UCF, could be potentially competing at quarterback. Nick Marsh out the door at receiver. Unfortunately, stud receiver goes to Indiana. We'll talk about him later. KK Smith and Frederick Moore come in from Notre Dame and Michigan, respectively. I think they're going to be standout players from day one on this Michigan State offense. O-line is going to be a little bit questionable from the look of it. It's going to be some patchwork. It looks like it's some incoming portal players. Ben Morosky is probably the most notable one from UConn at left tackle. So again, it's going to be some patchwork. The D line is my biggest question with Michigan State. They lose their top 8 options through transfer or graduation on the defensive line. So massive turnover on the defensive line. That's the biggest question mark for me with Michigan State. But I think the additions I did point out are going to be good enough to at least have Michigan State competitive in some of the games that they are on similar playing styles with, aka the bottom 4 teams in the Big Ten that they, or at least the bottom teams that they do have on their schedule. So I'm going to put Michigan State a little higher than AT. I'm going to go with them at 15.
Yeah, so I actually found myself like being on the same wavelength as AT. So, buddy, if you're copying my notes, like just let me know now. But I had them at number 17, and it's not just because of the fact that they lost Aiden Childs in the transfer portal, or just not because of the fact that they lost Nick Marsh in the transfer portal as well. They also lost Jack Velling, who's going to be moving on to the NFL. That's going to be a big loss for his Michigan State football team, and I'm not sure. Outside of Cam Edwards, if Michigan State did enough to really replenish the weapons that they lost in the transfer portal, aside from what you already talked about with the defensive line, and that being a question mark as well. One person I did want to add, I did at least tickle my pickle a little bit, is Carson Gulker. He was a tight end at Ferris State. Was productive at Ferris State last year, over 550 yards and 7 touchdowns last year, for really a Division II powerhouse. But going from Division II up to the FBS, I know we just saw training that Jim was make this jump, and he was a superstar right away. But that doesn't always happen. So I'm curious to see what kind of role Carson Gulker has in this offense. I think the linebackers could be interesting. Kenny Soares and Deion Crawford. I think there's some solid linebackers here. While I do think Michigan State is at the very bottom outside of Purdue, I do think, because I trust Pat Fitzgerald in the job that he did at Northwestern, seeing him back in the Big Ten coaching ranks is good to see that. I do think that this Michigan State team will win a couple of games that I think is going to surprise some people a little bit. But I do think overall the expectations are not going to be very high, and they shouldn't be in year number 1.
Yeah, I'm just not excited about them. I think their offensive line will be okay. I know they kind of lost some guys. I think they added enough there. It wasn't great last season. So, yeah, the defensive line questions are huge. And they're just unknown yet again. I mean, I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse with that, but we just don't know enough about them right now in Pat Fitzgerald's first year. So just kind of got to keep them low right now.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I will say this, Reed, maybe a little bit of a Pat Fitzgerald truther on like having a little bit higher than AT and I, which begs the question, you did have Michigan State at number 17, like the rest of us. So who is your number 17 team then, if it's not a Michigan State, and it's certainly not a Purdue either?
It's Penn State's little brother. It's Maryland. Maryland is number 17. Yeah, geez, this could get really bleak really quickly. Mike Locksley going into year 8. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I'm going to be honest. I'm surprised he's still there. I'm surprised they haven't pulled the trigger on him. They have the talent. They have the talent on paper to be a competitive football team. I don't understand it. They had it last year, got off to a great start, classic Michael Locksley fashion. They started off 5-0 and then, or 4-0, excuse me, and then lose their final 8 games. So I don't know. I don't know with Maryland. I really don't understand it. Why Locksley's still there. Malik Washington at quarterback is probably the lone bright spot offensively. I love him as a quarterback. Kind of surprised they were able to retain him, if I'm being honest, but he is still there. The running back room could be interesting. Traquan Jones comes in from Old Dominion, over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns last year for the Monarchs. Could be a player alongside DeJuan Williams, who comes back as the starting tailback. Naheem Abdul Rahim Gladding, all name team. Also comes in from Old Dominion, nearly 700 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns, nearly 13.4 yards. Average depth of target. So he's gonna be a big playmaker to make up for the 3 top receivers all graduating for Maryland last season. Offensive line is where they have to step up. They looked very spotty at times, in my opinion. I watched a handful of Maryland games last season, and they just looked really spotty at times. So offensive line, if they can protect Malik Washington, I think they're going to be at least somewhat competitive offensively. Defense is where my biggest questions lie, though. They didn't really add much of anything, at least notably to my eye, aside from on the defensive line. They added a handful of players on the defensive line, but back end, they didn't really add much aside from Amari Jackson, got some notable game time at Boston College. Linebacker, I think they could have improved on potentially from the portal. They didn't really add much. So the players that they did lose in the portal, they didn't really backfill in the portal enough for me to have Maryland, as a real competitor in the Big Ten. I'm not high on Mike Locksley anymore. And if I'm being honest, I think he gets fired midseason. I think he gets fired midseason. If we're putting out bold predictions in the show, I think he gets fired by their bye week in week 8. I'm just going to put that out there.
I just hate to say, I don't even think that's a bold prediction at this point. It sounds like Mike is on. I mean, yeah. I don't know how they haven't pulled the trigger already. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Reed. I think it's between him and Luke Fickell who goes first this season. So
yeah.
We'll see. And if I was a betting man, I would say Mike goes first, unfortunately. But
yeah, and the early schedule does not favor him. At UConn week 2, home to Virginia Tech, UCLA, at Nebraska, Ohio State, both on the road, and Rutgers.
Well, we know he's a September legend, September legend. He just can't get it together at the end of the year. So
I don't know. James Franklin owns him, and at UConn with Jason Candle at the helm could, who knows? So,
right.
And then at Nebraska and at Ohio State, back to back is good luck. Good luck.
Yes. Listen, I will say this about Maryland, because I actually did have Maryland like a little bit higher than you did, Reed. I had him as my number 14 team. I hear what you guys are saying about Mike Locksley. Definitely a September Virgin. I don't think anyone is going to sit here and deny that whatsoever. And they also didn't add a ton of talent in the transfer portal, but they also didn't lose like very significant amount of talent either that they did have. The biggest loss I think that they did have was Lockie Rowland, who did transfer to Arkansas. He had 3 interceptions for his Maryland secondary last year. That's a tough loss, but they still have Malik Washington, who I think showed tremendous promise in his freshman campaign. Now he has another year in college to develop. His body's going to be more mature, and he's also has more game grit, so he's going to be mentally sharper as well, I would imagine. They also added Zion Ely is a 5-star recruit, in his 2026 recruiting class. I don't talk about true freshmen very often when it comes to doing a deep dive for each individual team. But with him being the top recruit in the country, this is someone that I'm expecting to, help out on the defensive trenches. So at least the defensive trenches should be better by virtue of Zion coming in and being somewhat productive and getting game licks early right away. He's ready to play day one. Mike Locksley, though, I think he's going to have to pull a couple of upsets here in order to remain for his 9th season. But I do think at the same time, there's pieces in play where I'm looking at Maryland, and I don't see them as a bottom 2 team. I think they're going to be one of those teams that, will at least give some of the the other teams in that middle to bottom tier a very tough time.
Yeah. I'm right in between you guys here. I'm sitting at number 15 for them. Similar thought process, though. Not super high on them. Like I said already, I think Mike gets fired, middle of the season here. Offensive line got gutted. They lose their top 3 receivers. It's just tough for him. One thing I'll say, somehow he continues to add just unbelievable talent on the defensive line. They brought in Zion Lee, but they have Sidney Stewart and Zahir Manning sitting there right now that didn't leave. And those are some of the best, pass rushers in the country, and those 3 right there. I mean, that's just a crazy defensive line room. I feel like we'll be talking about all 3 of these guys in the NFL at some point. But you just can't pull the rest of the defense together. You got to have a full front 7, not just good edge guys on the edge. And Malik Washington's back, but who are his targets? What their offensive line is going to look like? Just so many questions in the air here. And I think just to hone it in, I'm just not super hype on Mike Locksley right now. Just the same thing you were saying, Reed. I just don't think he's gonna be the man moving forward. So, I have him sitting at 15, but they could easily be a better team based off the talent composition they have, but they could easily be a lot worse team based off of, kind of the way that the trajectory that they've been going the last few seasons. So
For sure.
All right, so I'll go ahead and since I was the highest on Maryland, I guess I'll jump into who I have on my number 16 team. So number 16, I was debating whether to put them below Michigan State or not. I actually have UCLA coming in here at number 16, and this is a lot of a prove it type of deal, right? With Bob Chesney, right? You're going in. He did a great job at James Madison last year, so I do think the coaching has upgraded. But I will be honest, Deshaun Foster, he stepped in and he, this was a very bare bones team last year. And, while Bob Chesney did bring in some of his players from James Madison who made that run in the college football playoff in virtue, thanks to some chaos that happened in the ACC, Wayne Knight, Landon Ellis, Zahir West, for example, all coming from James Madison. At the same time, Big Ten competition is a whole different ball game. Even though James Madison, did have that 11-1 season, there was some times where, a couple of times they, struggled against teams that they really shouldn't have struggled against. And now you're playing against significantly better football teams. I did like the ad of Sammy Omasgo, the linebacker transfers in from Oklahoma. Things going to start right away. But for me, this is kind of a prove it type of deal for Bob Chesney and this implants of James Madison type of roster.
AT.
I'm interested to see what you got, Reed.
I am a little higher on UCLA. I have them at number 14. I think that implant of JMU talent is going to translate, at least in year one, for Bob Chesney. Again, the whole debate with him taking the UCLA job is that he's never coached in the Midwest or the West Coast. That was the whole debate. He's been a notable recruiter on the East Coast, and he's only coached on the East Coast. So I think Nico coming back at quarterback, I probably will let AT talk about that more since he is more familiar with Nico. I think that's going to translate well. Just another year of Nico. I think Wayne Knight could have a big season. I think he carries on from what he did at JMU, especially in front of an O-line that you're implanting 3 of the offensive linemen from JMU. At least I'm projecting them to start. So I think offensively they're going to be fine. Defensively is where I have questions, mainly on the defensive line. It's a portal overhaul. Anthony Jones goes to Nebraska. They have 4 graduates that all played significant game time last season. Defensive line is where I have my biggest question with UCLA. Massive portal churn there. Sammy, I'm not going to pronounce that last name. Sammy, the player that you pointed out, Jake, I think is a major impact player at linebacker coming in from Oklahoma. Drew Spinagati also comes in from JMU, got notable game time, 29 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 pass breakups last season, played in every game for JMU last season. I think he could also be an immediate impact player at linebacker. I'm also excited about their DB room that they bring in. DJ Barksdale, Tal Johnson from JMU and Utah, respectively, were both decently rated portal acquisitions at defensive back. So I think Bob Chesney can at least be competitive in year one. Again, not saying he's going to light the world on fire as a first-year head coach at UCLA, but I think the Bruins are going to be competitive. I think they might pull off an upset or two with their schedule. Just pulling up their schedule again. I mean, it's a very manageable schedule. At Michigan in week 12 at the end of November won't be fun, but also Minnesota at the start of November won't be fun. But I think UCLA can be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. I'm not much higher. I'm right there at 13, but I am a little bit higher there. I like Bob Chesney a lot. I think he's a heck of a coach. Wayne Knight, Spinagati, I think those guys are going to be some, really, really good additions there. And yeah, they keep Nico, which I think is the biggest piece for me. It's kind of the biggest plus going into next season. He is a good quarterback. I think the way he left Tennessee kind of was in a bad light. It kind of gave him a bad reputation, but I think that everyone could agree he always played well on the field. So if he can keep his head straight, I think it's just a testament that he stayed around at all at UCLA. I'm sure they're paying him well. I'm sure the money, makes it easy to transition coaches and everything. But also I think that they have an idea that Bob Chesney's going to be better than what they had last season. I think that there's some excitement around the program that I'm kind of buying into a little bit, which is all hype. We don't know anything until the game starts, but I do like UCLA a little bit. I think that this could easily be a top 10 Big Ten team as soon as they get it together. And I think Bob Chesney's kind of the first piece of that puzzle. So,
yeah, I guess for me and why I couldn't have UCLA, I guess I'm very low on them for say is because I saw Nico on the field last year, and we saw clearly that he's an FBS starting caliber quarterback, and at times shown that he is a star caliber player. With some of those big moments that he did have against Penn State, but I just don't feel that consistently enough he can elevate the talent around him. And that was a big thing that I saw last year, notably when Jason Eck was able to walk into Los Angeles, California, provide them the BDA treatment like in the month of September. The talent is better, but how much better is it? And I still think that, you're comparing other rosters in this conference. I think still the vast majority of the time you're looking at UCLA being the second best team on the field from a talent perspective. And I don't know how much that Nico can make up for that. And I'm not fully sure how much of Bob Chesney can make up for that either.
Yeah. And we'll know. I think this is an upgraded staff. But we will know. I mean, I think it'll be very easy to tell if they just look like a more sound football team, even have some closer 1-score games against some good teams. I'm not expecting them to go out and win 9-10 games, but if they win 7-8 and they're competitive in the rest of their games, then this is a team that's trending in the right direction. So that's kind of where I've got them right now. Like I said, I'm not expecting them to, shock the world. Obviously, I've got them sitting at, still pretty low in the conference, but I do think they'll be better than they were. So
yeah, just be competitive, UCLA.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now speaking of shocking the world, though, AT, I still see that number 16 for you, wide butt naked open. So, is there a shocking team that you have as your number 16 team in this conference going into the spring, or are you looking for a team a little bit more conventional for for this type of year? I guess for next team.
I don't think it's just a huge shock here. I've got Rutgers sitting at number 16. They're a good football team. I think that I love Shiano. I love the coach. I love Greg Shiano. I don't know if I love him because I think he's a really good winner or just because I think he's got a great mentality. But I think he always has. He's a good hype type guy. I think he gets the best out of his players. I think Rutgers is another school similar to Purdue where it's incredibly hard for them to get good guys around them. But they've got KJ Duff. They got Antoine Raymond right now that I think are going to be two guys that are going to be incredibly productive for them on the offensive side of the ball next year. They do lose a lot of their offensive line. Their quarterback's kind of up in the air right now, so that's kind of why I've got them low. I think that there's just not enough for me there to rate them high, and they're another team in the Big Ten that's got a really tough schedule. So kind of along the same lines of the Michigan State and the Purdue, I just don't know enough about this football team right now to rate them higher than, kind of bottom of the barrel. So, and it's kind of what you expect out of Rutgers. We know they're not going to be just a top 5 team in the Big Ten. So,
yeah, for sure. I also have Rutgers at number 16. Kaliak Manis, I think, is going to be a huge loss, over 3,000 yards through the air. They replace him with Dylan Lonergan by way of Alabama and Boston College. Over 2,000 yards last season. Can he take a step up from playing at Boston College to the Big Ten? We shall see. Exactly like AT said, Antoine Raymond and KJ Duff are going to be the standouts offensively. They have to run through Antoine Raymond. Is he going to be able to replicate 1,200 yards on the ground? I don't think so, but I think he's going to once again have a very productive season. The offense has to run through him, but who's he going to be running behind? I don't know yet. They are going to replace their whole entire left side of the offensive line. So that's going to be a huge hole to fill. Their entire defensive line is out the door through transfers and graduation. Rondo Porter is probably the most notable defensive line addition to me. Comes from App State, had 26 tackles, 23 pressures, 2 sacks. I think his ability off the edge is going to be noticeable from day one for this Rutgers defensive line. I just think that also Bo Masco going out the door to Texas was a very top corner prospect in the portal. So I think Greg Schiano, like you said, AT, I don't mind him as a head coach. I personally like him as for a Big Ten standards. I think he's a very good head coach. I just think at a place like Rutgers that's very hard to recruit and get in that big name talent to produce how they did last season. They just couldn't play defense to save their lives. They were one of the most productive offenses last season. They just couldn't stop a nosebleed defensively. So because of those question marks defensively, I'm going to put them at 16. But I mean, they could be sneaky if all their portal acquisitions hit. And Antoine Raymond and KJ Duff, put similar production out there in 2026. I could see them, sneak it up a few spots. But I'm gonna match you at 16.
Yeah, I did forget to mention too. They did add Travis Johansson, which I think as a defensive coordinator, which I think was a great hire. He comes out of STS level. I think he was at South Dakota State, I want to say, or one of those dominant programs. So I think I think that'll help their defensive problems that they had a ton. But I just don't know if he's going to be enough. So yet again, just some question marks there. So.
Yeah, I just don't think that the question marks are as, I guess, as concerning for me as it is for you guys, because I actually had Rutgers a little bit higher than consensus here. I had Rutgers coming in as my number 13 team in this conference. Part of it being a Greg Schiano truther here. I like what Greg Schiano has done over the years. I think he's done a great job stabilizing the program. Got to think about what Rutgers was, particularly in the Chris Ash era. Very ugly. Right, but he's come in, he's stabilized this team. That's a good football coach. KJ Duff, we talked about him a little bit already. He might be the best receiver in this conference outside of Jeremiah Smith. I mean, KJ Duff, he is a certified bad man. And he's also going to have Antoine Raymond, who's a bad man himself, in the backfield coming back. There's a couple of deadly weapons there right from the jump. Couple of other weapons that they have I find really fascinating too. Clay Trevin is a running back from Louisiana Tech. He had over 900 total yards, 8 touchdowns last season. Don't expect him to be the starter, obviously, because Antoine Raymond's coming back. But for a change of pace back, to give Raymond some breathing time, that's not a bad running back to have as your RB2 at all. And then they also added Cameron Anthony, who's a starting little tight end that they got from Ball State too. And then on top of that, we talked about defense being a problem. And listen, I don't think this defense is still going to be great. I think they're still going to have some issues in the back end. But to their credit, they did add a couple of other edge rushers. Malachi Davis from Toledo, he had 5.5 sacks last year. And then Jaden Burnett transfers from Tulsa, who has 6.5 sacks. So I think the defense goes from being just horrific to down horrendous, right? To maybe looking at them as a below average unit. And I think that lends themselves some room for improvement, especially if there isn't too much of a drop off from Calamanis to Dylan Lonergan, who, I'm not saying that he's at Athens level, but he does at least bring starting experience to the table, which I think is very valuable as well.
Sure. I want Rutgers to be good. I'll just put that out there, and I do like who they got at the helm in Greg Schiano. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I guess now we just got to figure out who you got sitting at number 15, Jake.
Yeah, you're right. I'm glad that you mentioned number 15, because that is actually where I do have the Wisconsin Badgers coming in under Luke Fickell, who I was actually a little surprised that he survived last season. I thought that might have been a situation where we did end up seeing a coaching change. But give Luke Fickell some credit. They played better in the month of November. That might have been a difference in terms of saving his job. And now he comes in. Some interesting pieces here, right? They added Colton Joseph, first and foremost, quarterback from Old Dominion. They also added Abdul Sama from Iowa State. That's a nice running back. They added a few other weapons like a Jacob Harris from Bowling Green. And, they added the defensive line in particular is going to be, I think, a fascinating unit to watch. Junior Poyser, Jake Anderson, Liam Dennett, all coming from either the group of 6 or from the notably Division III ranks. Liam Dennett, 15 sacks in 2025. You know how hard it is to have 15 sacks in a college season? I mean, I don't care what division level you're doing that. That's pretty damn impressive. So that'll be a fascinating unit to watch. I do think the offense is overall going to be better. My question is that has Luke Fickell learned that changing the core identity of Wisconsin football over the years? Has he learned that that's not going to work? Do they go back to Wisconsin football that we've seen from, a Paul Kreist, like for example, where they were running that rock and they were turning out running backs like nobody's business? That's $1 million question for me. This is more of I don't trust Luke Fickell here, but I do trust that the roster, I think offensively, does lend itself to some more upsides. But from a baseline perspective, Luke Fickell has to prove something to me, because he's lost his touch since he's been at Cincinnati and taking them to the college football playoff.
Yeah, man, I'm not much higher. I've got him sitting at 14. They're kind of, I'm in the same boat as you. I think Luke Fickell's another guy, just like we were talking about. Loxley, I think he could be gone middle of the season here. I really do like Colton Joseph. I think he's a top 25 quarterback, if I'm being completely honest, in the FBS right now. Love their linebacker room in Mason Posa and Cooper Catalan. I think those guys are some studs. But they did lose some big talent. They lost, Joe Brunner, their big guard there. Mason Reiger and Daryl Peterson on their defensive line are two guys that they're losing. So, and you just don't know enough about Loxley. I mean, the whole story behind what they did was they wanted to keep him around and put a lot more money in the NIL. But it seems like they didn't just, if that was the case, we felt like they were going to dominate the portal, and they did well, but they didn't just go out and dominate. So I don't know if it's just if they had as much money as they were trying to act like, or if people just are not as bought in over there right now. But just not a lot of hype around them, and not a lot of hype around Luke Fickell, to be honest. So got them sitting kind of in the bottom tier team. I think they've got a good team, and they've got obviously a well-renowned program. So would like to see Wisconsin be back at the top.
You know who is bought into Wisconsin, AT?
Me.
Me.
Who's not in the real good?
Sell me, Reed.
I am bought in on Wisconsin. I have Wisconsin at number 11.
Okay.
And because of that, it's not solely by one man, but one man did have a lot of influence, and his name is Colton Joseph. Exactly for the points that AT talked about. He was arguably top 25, top 20 quarterback in the country last year. 2,600 yards passing, over 1,000 rushing, 21 touchdowns, 10 picks, 13 touchdowns on the ground. Like, dude is straight production. He, at Old Dominion of all places, to put up those numbers is crazy. And to put him in a backfield with Abu Sama, who rushed for over 700 yards last year and 5 touchdowns at Iowa State, I think they get back to what Wisconsin football is: ground and pound, classic Big Ten West football. We're going to smash you in the mouth. They have to be able to do that with a competent offensive line, though. So if they put together a competent offensive line, I think they are capable of doing that. Jacob Harris comes in from Bowling Green at tight end. I think he's also going to be a major contributor there. Lance Mason back at tight end as well. Receiver is a big question. Zion Kearney and Malachi Coleman are two notable names from Oklahoma and Minnesota, respectfully. Didn't get a lot of playing time, but I think they could be impact players. Jalen Domingo, I think that's how you're saying that. Also a transfer addition, over 850 yards receiving, so I think he could be a impact player for day one at receiver. Defensive lines overhauled through the portal. I think they could. I don't know how they're going to be on the defensive line. DB room, I'm excited about. Marvin Burks Jr. from Missouri is probably the standout name there. Over 11 tackles, a pass breakup, interception from Missouri. Javon Robinson from Arizona State also got notable game time as well. So I'm trusting Luke Fickell. He's proven it before at Cincinnati. I think he gets back to that level. May not be this season. He's fully back to that level. I see them trending back in the right direction this season. They're going to be a middle of the pack Big Ten team this season. And I think I trust Wisconsin. They say they're backing him with NIL funding and the resources and everything like that. I'm trusting that. I'm believing in that. The Badgers are going to be somewhat relevant again. Got him at number 11. And Colton Joseph, we trust. And Colton Joseph, we trust.
And I do trust in Colton Joseph. I'll say that. I think he's a heck of a quarterback. Like you said, I love that you did sell me there. He is production. I love that. That's what we can call him. He just is production. So But you still have a little gap there sitting at 13, Reed. So where are we at there?
Yeah, I got the Northwestern Wildcats at 13. Now hear me out, because I know there's other people in the space that are a little bit higher on the Wildcats, but it's their roster and coaching staff is not why I have them at 13. It's the schedule. I talked about it in the open of the show. I cannot overlook the schedule. South Dakota State to open, bye week, you play 11 straight games. You can't overlook that. If they somehow go bowling with that schedule, which they very much could, they also have a ceiling of an 8-win football team, just like they were last season. I can't overlook the schedule. I think their roster on paper is, they did lose some players in the portal, but I think they added back in the portal at a decent amount. Also, notably, Chip Kelly comes in an offensive coordinator, which out of freaking nowhere, at least to me, I did not expect Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator of Northwestern in 2026, but here we are. Aiden Childs, I'm excited about. I think he showed signs at Michigan State. I think he carries that on in this Chip Kelly offense. And they brought some defensive players back that are going to be notable, namely Michael Kilbane and Robert Fitzgerald on the defensive line. So I'm cool with Northwestern at 13. I think they're a fringe bowl team. It's just the schedule I cannot overlook.
Yeah. No, I'm not much higher on him. I've got him sitting at 12. It's a lot of stuff I agree with exactly what you said. I think Chip Kelly was a crazy hire out of nowhere. I think he's a great hire. I think he'll be a great offensive coordinator. He's been proven, so I think that was a fantastic hire. Excited to watch Northwestern play in their new stadium. Huge renovations going on over there. They've spent a ton of money, so really, really wanting to go and get to a game out there now. But not to step on the same points. They lost some guys. They did add back a lot of talent, but we just don't know a lot about them. They lost Tyrion and Lewis, which were their two starting tackles last year. That's going to be tough to reproduce. But they do add in Aiden Childs, fantastic quarterback. I think he's going to be a day one contributor. I think he'll do a great job. He's somebody that could be a top 10 quarterback in the Big Ten here, or top 5 quarterback, I should say. They bring Robert Fitzgerald back as a safety. He's a stud for him. But yeah, outside of that, it's just we don't know a ton about them. I think they're a good team. I think they're a middle of the pack team. I think they're kind of on the fringe of getting outside of that, but we've got to see more from them. So it's obvious they're willing to spend money just with the renovations they've done alone. They're in a great market, so if they can continue heading in that direction, I think they could be good. But moving forward, I think, or this season, I should say, that they're kind of in the middle of the pack team for me. I've got them super close to you, Reed. So.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the one that will be the very highest on this Northwestern team because I actually have them cracking the top 10. They will be coming in, if I can learn how to drag properly, I have them coming in as my number 10 team in the Big Ten. I am, in fact, an Aiden Childs believer, especially being paired up with Chip Kelly. I think there's some good things that could be done there, particularly with what Chip Kelly done with Will Howard. As part of that national championship team at Ohio State a couple of years ago. But it's not just Aiden Childs. How about the pickup of Kobe McKenzie transferring in from Oklahoma? That's going to be probably one of the captains of that Northwestern defense next year. And how about David Braun as well? When David Braun took over, this Northwestern program was left for dead. When Pat Fitzgerald was fired because of the hazing allegations that happened under his watch. But David Braun, he's come in and he's done a wonderful job at Northwestern, leading to a bowl game, even getting a couple big wins, beating Penn State, for example, and almost beating Michigan as well. So this Northwestern team should not be underestimated by any stretch of the imagination. I also think the corners could be sneaky good. They brought in Brandon Des Fernandez from Central Michigan. He had multiple interceptions last year. And then Monte Pate transfers from Weber State, another Wildcat, Wildcat, the Wildcat transfer. We love to see it. Loves to play in that slot. 5 TFLs as a cornerback, dude. There's quite a bit to like here on this football team. Oh, and they happen to bring back Griffin Wild, who was an all Big Ten receiver last year. They bring back Robert Fitzgerald, who's going to be a ball hawk in the secondary, and who's going to be Kobe McKenzie's linebacker sitting next to him, Mac Uchman, all Big Ten linebackers. So I like this Northwestern football team. I like David Braun. And yeah, we are rolling with our first top 10 team on the list here tonight, fellas.
Don't forget Komoloff. Don't forget Komoloff in the backfield too. Nearly 1,000-yard rusher.
He's solid. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So you see that I do have a number 12 team. And I do want to preface this before I go to my number 12 team. So I do this based off of a pure baseline perspective. Once I'm done with my actual rankings, this might be prone to change. But for right now, Reed, what I need you to do real fast is I need you to go ahead and like get both feet, and grab something. Make sure that you're sitting. I do have Penn State as my number 12 team in the Big Ten right now. So now, hear me out. They are replacing a ton of talent on this team, right? We are talking about not only are they losing 10 NFL players, but they did lose a lot in the transfer portal as well that I would consider key losses. Ethan Grunkmeyer, who would have been your starting quarterback this year, he's gone. Luke Reynolds, he's also gone. How about their star edge rusher, Chaz Coleman and Xavier Gilliam? They're also gone. And then AJ Harris, who's going to be was one of your better corners, he moves off to Indiana. And then you look at things from the other side as well. I think we all agree here. Matt Campbell is a good coach to a very good coach. I think we all agree on that. But if you look at this Big Ten conference, guys, there's a lot of good to very good coaches in this conference. Ryan Day at Ohio State, Dan Lanning at Oregon, Kyle Whittingham at Michigan. I would even argue Lincoln Riley at USC is a good coach. Kirk Frenitz at Iowa, that's a good coach. PJ Fleck, they're rowing the boat at Minnesota. Washington, they got it rolling as well up there with Jed Fish. Brett from Lima at Illinois. And it's more stable rosters. And think about what they brought in on the back end to replace those 10 NFL players plus the multiple guys, star players, mind you, that left in the transfer portal. It's essentially an Iowa State implant. So let me ask you this. How high would you have Iowa State, the 2024 Iowa State team, within the confines of the Big Ten? That's what we have to ask ourselves here. That's essentially what we're looking at. I know this is going to be an extremely controversial take. I understand that. I might change my mind after I see a couple of metrics. But for right now, from a pure baseline perspective, without knowing what development happens in spring ball, I'm asking myself, if Iowa State was in the Big Ten last year, where would I have them? This is where I would have Iowa State.
Go, AT.
I just I just can't wait to hear what Reed has to say about this. I know he's going to be fuming. I'm a lot higher on him. I'm not gonna hurt Reed's feelings too bad here. I agree with everything that Jake just said. There is a lot of unknowns. We don't know a bunch about them. It's still Penn State. They still got some good guys that they're keeping on the team. I've got them sitting inside the top 10. I've got them at number 9 right now. I'm sorry. I've got them, number 9. And so the reason I'm not higher on them, and my 9, 7, and 8 teams could all kind of interchange. It's tough for me. I kind of had the same thought process as you, Jake, and a lot of it. Where would I have Iowa State right now? I would probably have Iowa State sitting at like number 10, number 11. But I think this is a team that also has, Tony Rojas on there on the defensive side. I think that they have some Penn State guys that'll stay around that'll add a little bit of a better program than just Iowa State. I think that they're middle of the pack, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were a top 7 to 5 type team. But I just don't know a ton about them yet. And it does seem like this is going to be Iowa State 2.0 at now sitting in Pennsylvania. But until proven otherwise, I guess we just kind of got to wait and see. I love Rocco Beck. You guys know that. I think he's a fantastic quarterback with a great name. But you do lose guys like Katron Allen. You lose Zane Durant. You lose Wheatley. One of your safeties, and those are some big names there. So it's tough for me to have them rated any higher, but I do have them sitting inside the top 10 at least. So,
Jake. Right. I would call you a friend, Jake, right? Like we're friends. We're friends. We're acquaintances. We're coworkers.
It's a good thing that we're not too close to each other, huh? Like if you were trying to reach for the screen.
It's also a good thing we're live because could have some choice language, but I'm going to keep that to myself.
You're never gonna kill me on the SEC one anyway, so it's fine. It's fine.
Hey Jake, put the Penn State logo at 7. Put the Penn State logo at 7. I've said this before in the show. I've said this on my own channel. Shout out to Mike of More College Football. This Penn State team has the ceiling of 10-2 and a playoff team. And I'm going to tell you why. Multi-year starter Rocco Beck at quarterback. 2,500 yards last year. We can't overlook that he got injured last season. He's going to be healthy. Comes in with Taylor Mauser as his offensive coordinator. Carson Hansen inserted at running back alongside possibly one of the most underrated portal additions of the entire cycle, James Peoples from Ohio State at running back. Thunder and lightning. Kobe Howard returns at receiver. Brett Eskelson, Chase Sowell, Keith Jones Jr., all added at receiver. All over 400 yards receiving, multiple touchdowns between the three of them. Andrew Rapplier, my favorite player on this entire team, back at tight end. Benjamin Brommer, 6'7". Gabe Burkle, 6'4". Cooper Alexander, 6'5". The smallest tight end we have in our room is 6'4". I'm not done. I'm not done.
Get the ether beat out.
Get the ether beat out. Trevor Burr on the offensive line. Vea, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name. Vea on the offensive line. Will Tompkins, Brock Riker. Cool. How can you overlook Cool? Anthony Donka back. Nolan Roche back. Drew Shelton out the door. Nick Dawkins out the door. Iona. Yeah. He's also gone. That's okay. Cooper Cousins back. Ruley back. Rucci back. Donka back.
It's not like you were hitting us with a spell with all those names you were throwing out there for a minute. But.
Yeah, you know what? Armstrong and Odom in at defensive line. Keanu Williams, Siola Tapaki, both from UCLA. Alexander McPherson, going to be a rotation edge from Colorado. He comes in. Rojas has potential to be a top 5 linebacker in all of college football next season because that's what he was before he got injured last season. He comes back. He is Penn State through and through. He was flirted to go with James Franklin of Blacksburg. He comes back after giving the entire Nittany Nation a heart attack on Twitter for about 2 weeks, flirting of going to Blacksburg. Caleb Bacon, Caleb Brazina, Cooper Abell in at linebacker, arguably the best safety in the entire portal. Marcus Neal Jr. comes in from Iowa State. He's going to be a rover. He's going to be the star backer in this Danton Lynn improved defense from last season from that fraud, Jim Knowles. Jeremiah Cooper also joins him at safety. Davian Collins, Zion Tracy, Darius Dixon. This is a playoff team. You can clip it, put it in the hype video. I've done this on the show before, and I'm not doing it again. This is a 10-2 football team. We lose to Michigan, maybe to USC at home, and at Washington. This is the easiest schedule I've ever seen in my life. You could probably tell I'm getting red right now because I care. Penn State, top 7 team in the Big Ten, fringe playoff team next season.
The schedule's favorable. The schedule's very, very favorable.
Yeah, I think we agree. I think Penn State, and we talked about this earlier before we even jumped into these rankings, talking about the scheduling disparity and how it is easier to get deduct certain teams than others. When you have a 9-game schedule, there's 17 other teams in your conference. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying. 10-2 is certainly possible for his Penn State team, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was the baseline. But at the same time, when I think about Matt Campbell, what was the biggest problem that James Franklin had at Penn State? And that was winning big games.
No,
I don't know if Matt Campbell is able to sit back. Pat what James Franklin did, because remember, Big 12 had similar resources, top to bottom. There is not as much of a discrepancy in resources in the Big 12 as what you see in the Big 10.
That's true.
What did we see Matt Campbell do in the 2024 Big 12 championship against Arizona State, for example? Really big game. How did that Iowa State team perform? So I think I hear what you're saying. I would not be surprised at all if Penn State is in the college football playoff as a 10-2 football team and they get one of those 12 spots. But again, you're replacing 10 NFL guys. You're replacing a lot of talent, quite a bit of talent in the transfer portal as well. And what primarily was brought in was Iowa State. And again, I ask, if Iowa State was in this conference last year, where would you rank them? And that's why I had Penn State where I am. Just trying to, let's just stop for a second. That the logo is the logo. So that's where I see Penn State as of right now.
I'll say it, you know, in 10 years, we're going to be looking back and we're going to say, who was the greatest coach of all time? Was it Nick Saban or was it James Franklin? And the fact that Penn State let him is insane. I can't believe that you guys what I think is the greatest coach of all time.
Oh my goodness.
You can't. Okay, hold on. You cannot deny that he is one of the most consistent coaches. One of the most consistent.
I don't deny that at all. I think he's done what few people have done at Iowa State, and that is win consistently. I'm talking about his ability to win big games. That's a question for me that still needs to be answered. Now that he's at a place where he's going to have significantly more resources than the majority of not just your conference, but the vast majority of college football, there's no more excuses, which was a reason why James Franklin ultimately got fired, because he did consistently lose those big games, even though he had many resources to work with compared to his peers.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Reed. I just had to stir the pot a little bit, you know.
No, I mean, shoot, we were stirring the pot for, I don't know, 20 minutes now ever since Jake put that logo at 12. Like, but again, you know, it's a new era. Not me. Penn State has had this head coach for the past 12 seasons. It was fun while it lasted. We reached a plateau, couldn't get over it. And you know, I hope James Franklin does well at Virginia Tech, and I think he will. We'll talk about that at a later point. I think Virginia Tech might be back sooner than we think. But, you know, what happened.
That's right.
In my number 12 spot, I have the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think PJ Fleck is kind of almost at a similar point at what James Franklin ended at Penn State. I think he's almost reaching a plateau, if I'm being honest. Not to segue, but I think Minnesota is reaching a plateau with PJ Fleck. I think losing Corey Parrish is going to have a bigger impact than what people think on both sides of the ball, because he did play both ways last season. They do return Anthony Smith off the edge. Could be a notable player, will be a notable player. Aiden Gooseby. Drake Lindsey has to step up at quarterback. He was very solid in his freshman year, but he has to level up his game. Darius Taylor back in the backfield. I think he needs to stay healthy. He had some injury problems last season. Receiver is a big question mark. Lameek Brockington is out. He was the number one receiver. It's going to be by committee to replace his, production from last season. Return a good chunk of the offensive line, which is promising for Minnesota. But I think, again, PJ Fleck's just reaching a peak. He's just reaching a plateau, and I don't know if he's really going to get over the hump in Minnesota. So I think having him at 12, while still competitive, I'm going to put the Golden Gophers at 12.
Yeah, I'm not much higher on them. I've got them sitting at number 10 right now. I think they're just kind of a fringe top 10 team. Everything you said, I agree with. I think losing Coy Parrish was huge. It's really going to depend on Drake Lindsey for them in my book. I think that if they can develop him, if they can do a really good job of making him better than he was last season, I think it was some good experience for him. But if he is significantly better, I think this could be a good football team. But if he doesn't improve much, I think we're going to get more of the same. And I don't know how much outside of him they have improved. They do return Javon Tracy. They keep their starting center, which is massive. Anthony Smith off the edge that you mentioned, Reed. He's a stud. They also get Zion Chapman there. So I think defensively they'll be okay. But losing Corey Parrish is tough. And it really is just going to all depend on how much better Drake Lindsey can be. So I'm kind of in the same boat though. PJ Fleck, I think a good coach, not a great coach. And I think he's kind of in a similar boat of what we were just talking about with Penn State, where it feels like he's plateaued there. And it doesn't seem like they're going to get much better. He's been there for a while now, and they've kind of been in this same middle of the pack, maybe top 8 team, but maybe top 13 team, or bottom half team. So it's just tough to have him rated any higher than this right now, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, so I actually had this Minnesota team a little bit higher than both of you guys. I actually had them coming in as my number 7 team. First and foremost, I really like PJ Fleck. I think PJ Fleck has done a nice job and has quietly had Minnesota as one of the more consistent programs in the Big Ten. Maybe they didn't have the the home run season like under PJ Fleck, but they've consistently been above average to a good football team, and I think we can expect that from this Minnesota squad this year. Corey Parrish is going to be tough. That's going to be tough to replace, and there's no denying that. And they do also lose Devin Eastern in the draft, but what I think is going to certainly help with Drake Lindsey's development is that they brought in Perry Thompson, transfers in from Auburn, definitely a starting caliber receiver coming in from the SEC, and Perry Thompson gets the benefit of having an actual quarterback because that was something that Auburn struggled with last year. The quarterback position at Auburn left a little bit more to desire, to put it nicely. So I do like that. Drake Lindsey is going to have a really nice receiver in Perry Thompson. He's going to be wide receiver 1 at Minnesota. And with Zion Chapman as well as some of the other additions that you talked about, AT, on the defensive side of the ball, I think this is a team where you're looking at them and, not in that dark horse conversation to win the Big 12. But I think we can look at Minnesota combined with PJ Fleck being a good head coach. And I think we can see Minnesota be at least in that upper echelon in terms of that middle tier in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of there's just unknowns there for me. I feel like I'm not just super hype on PJ Fleck. I think they're a good football team, but just having them above middle of the pack for me is just tough right now. I see them sitting in like an 8 to 10 range personally. So.
Yeah, and I mean, AT is already chalking up a loss for them in week 2. So.
That's right. Yeah, they got to get that non-conference. They got to get those non-conference games going, and they got a tough one. That's all I got to say. Week 2, brutal non-conference schedule.
Hey, AT, speaking of the brutality of the Big Ten, because I've already stirred the pot a little bit myself tonight. I figured it would be your turn to try to stir the pot a little bit as we start to wrap up this bottom half of the Big Ten. In terms of who you got going as your number 11, maybe someone that you're not as high on as that Minnesota team that we just talked about.
And this is tough too, because when we get into my number 8, I'll have some more to say on it. But I've got sitting at number 11 right now. I've got Illinois. They're yet again ton of unknowns. They lose Luke Altmaier, their starting quarterback. They lose 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen, which is just brutal in my opinion. They lose Hank Beatty, J.C. Davis. They do add Bobby Hawk at DC. I think that was a good hire. Another guy coming out of the FCS with some good experience as a head coach. They add some guys to try to replace that offensive line, but still some question marks at quarterback for them. Just don't really know what to expect. I do like Bielema. I think yet again, kind of another good coach, not great coach. But I think he's also the type of guy that does a lot more with less. Typically, you don't see Illinois killing the recruiting charge. You don't see them just bringing in 4 and 5 star guys all the time. They'll get 1 or 2. But he's always got them, competing. And I think last year they got a little bit oversold in the beginning of the season, and everybody was kind of really hype on them, and they kind of got let down, especially when they played Indiana and just got absolutely destroyed. Indiana and got destroyed. But here we are. I think they're kind of a middle of the pack team. I think they'll be okay, but just not a lot to look forward to with them. And just they lost so much talent, especially on the offensive line that. And losing their starting quarterback too. I think they lost a lot of production there. So I don't know where you guys got him, but I'll let y'all kind of take it from there. I feel like y'all going to be close to me on this one.
AT, you're not a believer in Caden Hauser?
I am. I do like Hauser. He is good. You make a good point there, but I think that kind of same boat. I think there's a lot that we don't know, and bringing him in, I think he fits Bill's system. He's very similar to Altmaier, but it's tough to tell right now. So,
yeah, I'm a little bit higher on this Illinois team. I actually considered putting them in my top 8. It was between Illinois and another team for the 8th spot. I had them coming in at number 9 though, because I don't trust this program as much as my number 8 team. I do like Caden Hauser, like Reed mentioned. I also like the weapons that they brought in as well. Alex Perry from Florida International, going from Mr. Low Line to Champaign, Illinois. I think that will be a good add. Almost 10 touchdowns last year for that FIU football team, giving Alex Perry the ball. Then they also add Jayshon Platt on the other side. So there's a world of possibility here where you're looking at Illinois, and the outside weaponry actually might be better than what it was last year. So I think there's an upgrade in the receiving room for sure. I think defensive line, you're looking at the defensive line, and I think there's a couple of sneaky good ads here. Daryl Prater from Jacksonville State, he had 5 TFLs, which doesn't sound a lot, but when you're an interior defensive lineman and you're constantly getting double teamed each and every single time, getting 5 TFLs out of that's notable. That's not nothing. And then Carter Jenke transfers in from Penn. Smart kid, Ivy League kid, comes in as a graduate transfer. He had 9 TFLs in the Ivy League, a multi-bid league in the FCS. First time that's happened because it's the first time the Ivy League has participated in the FCS playoffs. So that's a good league that he's coming from, and he had almost double-digit TFLs. Plus, Brent Belima, man, he just knows how to coach, and we've seen this in the bowl games last couple of years. I know the Indiana blowout, that was discouraging to see, but I'm not going to hold that over their head too much because, let's be honest, Indiana was doing that to a lot of teams, Oregon included. And there's been a lot of talk about Oregon being a national championship contender. So, maybe we give Illinois a little bit of grace, like from that standpoint. I don't love this football team, but I like this football team overall. And I do have them in the upper half, but just barely.
Yeah, similar to you, Jake. I have him at number 8. I don't love him, but I like him.
Yeah,
I think Illinois could be competitive again. Caden Hauser has the keys to the car. He's gonna be driving the offense. I really like him. Was very productive at ECU. Over 3,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 6 picks, 9 more rushing touchdowns. Like, again, similar to previous quarterbacks that we've talked about, Aiden Childs and the Wisconsin quarterback. He's blanking the name right now. Another productive group of 5 quarterback that comes in taking a step up. Khalil Valentine, Caden Fagan are both back at running back. Hudson Clement, another year of him at receiver. I think he'll take a step up. Colin Dixon also back at receiver. Perry and Platt are going to be 2 notable names that you pointed out, Jake. The main question offensively for me is that offensive line that AT talked about. They are overturning 4 of the 5 starters from last season. Huge question mark there. We'll see how they handle it. I trust a Brett Bielema defense mainly because he has been a defensive coach by trade. So even though they are bringing in Bobby Howe as a new defensive coordinator, I trust the two of their minds to improve this defense from last season, which was not as productive, obviously, as their offense. So I think the additions they did make between the offense and the defense, I think they're good for right in that middle pack of Big Ten teams in my eyes. I see them being a good competitive team once again in 2026. I'm going to have them at number 8.
Yeah. I think it's an easy 8-win type team, but I think with the losses on the offensive line, I think it's going to be tough for them, especially bringing in a new quarterback, even though Hauser is very solid.
Yeah, and I think last year as well, I think we could tell in the Illinois that last year was a lost opportunity with the amount of returning production that they brought back. There was some talk about them being a dark horse to maybe make the college football playoff and maybe even give Ohio State a tough time. You got Ohio State coming into your home building. So last year can be viewed as a disappointment, but it was still a really good season. Now it's going to be maybe take a little bit of time for them to get to a point where maybe they can take another shot at trying to make a college football playoff or be a realistic competitor in the in the Big Ten. But Illinois at least is now at a point where under Brett Bielema, they go from being a complete afterthought year in and year out to at least being a window shot program, which I think needs to be like that. That's good progress.
Yeah,
for sure.
Now,
But Jake, who do you have at 11?
Now, I talked about how I liked Illinois and I didn't love them. Team that I didn't like as much, Nebraska. Don't like Nebraska as much as Illinois or Northwestern. I mean, first and foremost, Dylan Raiola, he transferred to Oregon, right? He's not even my man didn't even. He left Nebraska a guaranteed starting job, and he's not even going to be the starting quarterback because Dante Moore decided to come back at the 11th hour. I was surprised as you guys when that happened, but Dylan Raiola left to kind of take a 1-year internship to learn from Dante Moore. But it's not just him. They lose a couple of really good weapons as well. Emmert Johnson at running back, Dane Key are both going to go off to the NFL. So they have to replace their 2 top weapons. I'm just concerned about the offensive identity of Nebraska right now. When Dylan Raiola went down with injury late in the year, they completely lost their offensive identity. And I feel like they just have the same problem, except it's not Dylan Raiola at the quarterback position. It's Anthony Colandrea, which I do love. I do love me some Anthony Colandrea. Like, he's a dog. And I do think the defense could be a little bit better. They brought in a couple of key defensive pieces from San Diego State, Owen Chambliss and Delane McDougall, both coming in from San Diego State, a very good defensive unit last year. And they also did add Danny Odom III, who's a 5-star recruit, according to 247 Sports. Probably will play quite a bit as a true freshman. I just don't really trust the offensive identity for Nebraska right now. And if year-free Matt Rule couldn't get Nebraska to, I guess, a significant breakout year, I just don't know when it's going to happen under a Matt Rule team. So right now, I think there's some pieces that I really like, but I don't love, which is why I have Nebraska at 11, to the dismay of one of our co-hosts who is letting me have it.
I'll be honest. And this is going to be sad for one of the co-hosts, and the other one's going to feel a little better. I've already see a glaring issue in my Big Ten rankings here. I think that I've got Nebraska sitting at number 8, but I think that Penn State has a better chance to go to the Big Ten championship than Nebraska does next season. A lot of it's to do with schedule. I think Nebraska's got a gauntlet. Penn State's kind of got an easier route there. But also, I don't think these teams are much different right now. One thing is that I am not and just sold on Matt Rule yet. I think he's got some more to be desired. And I think that Campbell at least is kind of on the path of he could be the guy. He could be the guy. So we know less about Campbell at this level than we do Matt Rule, and there's just not a ton to be excited about so far with Rule. But yet again, Raiola gets hurt. It kind of broke their offensive identity down. I think you nailed that, Jake. So it could just be the case that they just kind of got dealt a bad hand last season. So it's tough to just say it's all Rule's fault. But they do. They lose Raiola. They lose Dane Key. They lose Emmett Johnson. These are all going to be key pieces that they got to have back next year, that they wanted to have back next year. A couple of those guys, obviously going to the draft and everything. But it's just tough to have them ranked any higher right now. They do add Owen Chambliss. I know you mentioned him. That's a dog on the defensive side. But, and Calandra, he could be really good. But, we time will tell. I don't know if Matt Rule's doing the best job of getting the best out of his quarterbacks. But it is kind of surprising that Raiola left like he did. I feel like there has to be more to that story there. So, but yeah, I think they're still a middle tier team. They could easily go compete. I think they've got one of the best fan bases in the country. I'll always shout out the Cornhuskers for that. They always show up and show out. So it's hard not to pull for them. But right now I'm just not insanely excited about the trajectory of the football team. So got them sitting kind of middle of the pack at 8, 9-ish really for me. So.
Yeah, I got him down there with you, Jake. I have Nebraska at 10. And some people have said, in various spaces that this could be the best Nebraska roster that Matt Rule has built so far in his tenure. And I see how people could be high on their roster on paper. I actually think the coaching is what's holding them back. I think the coaching is what's holding them back, mainly because of Dana Holgorsen as offensive coordinator. I'm not sold on Dana Holgorsen as offensive coordinator. I feel like that's part of the reason Raiola might have left, but that's just my speculation. Calandria, I do think could be very productive in his own right. If you just look at his raw production at UNLV last year, he was amazing. He accounted for over 4,000 yards of all-purpose yards and over 30 touchdowns. So if he brings that raw production into this Nebraska offense, exactly for the points AT said, they're going to be competitive. They bring a huge chunk of their receiver pool back. They add Quasi Gilmore from UCLA, who I think is an underrated receiver addition. Replacing Emmett Johnson's production at running back is going to be hard to do. So it's going to be a patchwork offensive line. They have to replace 3 of the 5 starters. All my questions are on the offensive side. And if they can be better under Rob Arch on defense, I think Rob Arch is an underrated hire. He's going to run a 4-2-5 defense, which I think is the best base defense you can play. So I think Nebraska has definitely a chance to be competitive, but I'm not sold on Dana Holgorsen being the play caller. And because of that, I have him at 10. And I really want to know what Jake is giggling about.
No, I'm just reading through the live chat. Just having a blast. I like reading the comments in the live chat. A lot of emotion tonight that's being brought out, and I think that's going to be a common theme as we go for our power comments ratings. But yeah, Reed, I'm right there with you. I've heard it being talked about as well with how Nebraska could have one of the better teams in recent memory. I guess for me right now, it's quintessentially I have the melatonin medicine right now going when it comes to Nebraska, and I'm also kind of giggling because this is how I am with Nebraska right now. Like, you see the dog sleeping, we're sleeping until further notice, and Matt Rule can get this thing turned around. If this offense has more substance outside of the quarterback position, I think they'll be an upper half team. But for now, Dana Holgorsen and the rest of his offensive staff, they have to prove it.
Yeah,
agreed.
They got to prove it.
Yeah,
they definitely got to prove it.
Listen, I mean, we're officially we have completed the bottom half, but now we're going to go ahead and jump into the top half of this list now. And I appreciate you guys listening in. We're having a great time talking Big Ten football. So number 9, we're getting ready to jump into the top half officially. So Reed, you're higher on this team than Nebraska, but who you got in there in that nice little sliver between Illinois and Nebraska on your personal list?
Yeah, and I only have them. I'm only giving this team a slight edge over Nebraska because of the head coaching spot, and that's the Iowa Hawkeyes. Kirk Ferentz is the model of consistency. He's been there over 20 years. I mean, you could basically pencil in Iowa as an 8-4 team every single year. You don't even need to look at their schedule. You can pencil them in 8-4 every single year because that's what Kirk Ferentz does. With Iowa, I feel like, I don't know about the two of you. I feel like Kirk Ferentz is kind of running out of time in his tenure at Iowa. He's been there for my entire lifetime, which is crazy to say. And I feel like they still just don't have the answer at quarterback. They still don't have the answer at quarterback. We've been talking about this for years now, that Iowa just needs a competent quarterback, and they'll be a playoff team. You saw it last year. They were how many one-score games? 1, 2, 3, 4. They were 4 one-score games away from being an undefeated team. And I don't know if that falls completely on Mark Gronowski or not. I don't know. But, they still don't have a competent quarterback. I have no idea who the quarterback is going to be. Hank Brown, okay. Jeremy Hecklinski, okay. Both of those are 2 unproven players for Iowa. And, Kamari Moulton's back at running back. I like that. Reese Van Der Zee at receiver has some promising upside. Their offensive line is going to have to move some pieces around, although they've been known to have the best offensive line in the country of the past few years. So I trust their offensive staff to be able to produce that way. Their defense, I mean, Iowa always has a very stout defense. Bryce Hawthorne is probably the most notable returning player to that roster that isn't a transfer addition. So Iowa, model of consistency. I'm good putting them smack dab in the middle because they are going to be a competitive team no matter what. As long as Kirk Ferentz is there, they will be competitive. So Iowa, number 9.
Yeah, I've got them sitting at 7. I agree with a lot of what you said. I'll keep it short and sweet here. Not much more to add. I mean, they do lose the quarterback and Garnowitzki. They lost Jennings Dunker, which is one of their good defensive tackles. But I think that they're kind of the quarterback questions alone. We don't know who it's going to be. It seems like they've kind of got some idea there, but we still up in the air. We're in spring here, so we don't really know. They do have a good defense. We always know they're going to have a good defense. Like you said, Reed, a lot of close one-score games last season. If they can turn that around, then we're talking about a top 5, top 4 team, top 3 team in the Big Ten. But just haven't seen that from them here. I will say Deshaun Lee, one of their cornerbacks, I think is one of the best cornerbacks in the country. They've got several of those type guys on defense, though. No surprise there. Not much more to add. Just kind of a little bit hyper on them, just because I do think that they're 8-4 team that's just 1 or 2 plays away from being a 10-2 team. And so, if they can make those couple plays this season, then we're talking about a top 10 team in Iowa. If they can't, then they'll go 8-4 and go to a bowl game just like they have here recently. So that's pretty much all I got. Not to step on Reed's points there. Just kind of feel the same way about them.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit similar to AT than I am to Reed on this one. I actually do have him coming in as my number 6 team. Listen, I think we know what to expect from an Iowa defense, like in any given year. This is going to be one of the best defenses in the entire country, in spite of the fact that they had 3 NFL players on that defense, as well as Brian Allen transferring to Vanderbilt. But one player that I am excited about on the offensive side of the ball, LJ Phillips, I'm sure it's been talked about already. My dude almost had 2,000 yards. I mean, that is crazy to think about, and did it in one of the best conferences in the FCS, in that Missouri Valley Conference. So, LJ Phillips, he's going to come in. He's going to have a significant role in this offense right away. It's just we know what to expect from Iowa football at this point, right? They are a model of consistency, like you guys mentioned. And I will acknowledge, too, that they don't have the same upsides as a Nebraska or a Penn State in particular. Oh, boy. So I will say this. I think Iowa, we know what to expect from Iowa. I think they're going to be a stingy football team to go up against. But, with that being said, I like Iowa, but I think this is as high as they go. I don't see them being a premier contender by any means, but they'll give those premier contenders a tough time like they normally do.
Especially at Kinnick, because Kinnick is one of the hardest places to play noon, 3:30, or 8 o'clock at night. So,
yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump in because I know this next team that I do have on the list is I'm not going to be as high on. I do have Washington coming in here as my number 8 team. First and foremost, how is that locker room going to receive the fact that its starting quarterback said that he put a promotion, a post out saying that he was going to stay. He inked a multi-year NIL deal, only to then enter the transfer portal. And the only reason that he is back on this football team is because Washington had to sue him to get him to come back. So I think there's a really weird energy in that Washington locker room right now. But if he's received just fine and if it's not a significant distraction, I think Washington is going to be higher than 8 here. I think particularly the offensive line, which was one of their bigger problems when it came down to those bigger games and those bigger moments. That's why Washington struggled. The offensive line is going to be better. Cody Green is a 5-star recruit in his 2026 recruiting class. He's going to play right away. And then on the opposite side, they brought in Colt Dietrich, who was one of the lone bright spots on that Sam Houston football team last year. Horrific team. but he was not a reason why they were horrific. He did his job as the blindside blocker. He's going to start right away, transferring in from Sam Houston. I am also curious about the fact that they brought in Christian Moss as well. He transfers in from Kennesaw State, almost 700 yards and a couple of touchdowns last season. I think he's going to help things out as well. But I think there's a weird energy around Washington, and I'm looking at it from the perspective of I think it is going to be a distraction given what happened with that transfer portal situation with their starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit higher on him. I'm not just going crazy. I've got him sitting at number 6 for me right now. I like Jetfish. Huge. Well, I mean, what's going to happen with the locker room with the whole Damon Williams thing? That's up in the air right now. He's a good quarterback, though. If he can get over that and the rest of the team can get over it, then, yeah, they're going to win games. But, I feel the same way as you on a lot of it, Jake. They did lose a big running back in Jonah Coleman. They added a couple guys there, but nothing that's just to sing home about. To me, still a really good football team, still a top 5 to 10 team here. So got him sitting at 6. I think that Jed Fish is a good coach. I think Washington's going to continue to trend in the right direction, but I don't think they're one of the best teams in the conference. So,
yeah, ditto. I also have Washington at 6. I feel like Jonah Coleman is arguably a bigger question mark than Damon Williams is right now. I feel like the Damon Williams situation came and went. We'll see how that plays out. Obviously, that is a big talking point. But Jonah Coleman, was an all world running back for them. That's a lot of production to fill as he graduates. So Jaden Lamar is probably the most notable name coming in from the portal, at least. Transferred in from Oregon, former 4-star prospect. Jordan Washington was a redshirt freshman last season, got some game time last season as well. So I expect them to rotate at least at running back. Christian Moss is the standout addition on offense for me, as Jake pointed out. Was the best receiver on that Kennesaw State team last year, conference winner. So I expect him to immediately fill the shoes of Denzel Boston. Probably not to the same level, but at least we'll fill those shoes to some degree. I feel like their defensive line additions don't get talked about enough. Kai McClendon from the Mississippi State Bulldogs comes in at defensive tackle. Logan George from Ohio State got a couple of game time. Darren Conley from Ball State, Deshaun Watts, Sacramento State. They combined for 46 tackles between the two of them and 32 quarterback pressures. So I think those two will be standouts on the defensive line. And yeah, I mean, biggest question mark for me is that running back position, because Jonah Coleman was everything for them aside from Damon Williams and Denzel Boston offensively. So if they can find some way to backfill that Jonah Coleman production, I expect Washington to be right back where they were last season, near that upper tier of the Big Ten, number 6.
Yeah, I agree, obviously.
All right, so we find ourselves now getting into our top 5. So, really starting to get into the the contenders of his conference, or at least teams that I think have a realistic shot. So to kick things off with that top 5, AT's the man of the hour, in uncharted territory, talking about Midwestern football. AT, my man, what are we working at in terms of who's going to be kicking off your top 5 for you?
Talking Midwestern football for number 5, I'm going all the way out west. I'm looking at the West Coast completely. Looking at Southern Cal here, USC sitting at number 5. I feel like this might even be a consensus across us here. I don't know where you guys are at on them, but to me, they're the 5th best team in the conference until proven otherwise. Obviously, incredible high school recruiting class. Hard to tell that that's going to mean anything, though. There was an interview with Kirk Signetti literally this last week, and he said the exact words. He said, it's hard to have these guys in high school come and be productive. It's hard to develop them. In other words, we want these 23, these 22-year-olds to come in here that have already been developed for us. So even though the high school recruiting class was so good, it doesn't really mean much. They lose Mekhi Lemon, lose Jacoby Lane. Those guys are huge producers. It's going to suck to see them go for them. But Jaden Miava's back. They add Terrell Anderson. Obviously, what Lincoln Riley is always able to do with offenses, he's always able to produce. He's always able to develop quarterbacks really well. You can just about expect the guy, if he keeps a guy from one year to the next, he's going to be better the next season. It's happened every single time. Caleb Williams, it's happened with so many other quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts got better under him. So many guys. So I expect Miava to be better, and he's already a really good quarterback. And then other than that, I have really good expectations for USC, but I feel like they're going to be in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't think this season is going to be their Big Ten breakout. I think we're talking about an 8-4, 10-2 team. But I think with the high school guys they have, if they can keep them around, this will be a really good football team in the next couple of years.
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you talked about the high school recruiting, because what we've seen from USC is that, as we've seen Lincoln Riley kind of reinvent himself in terms of trying to get that defense under control. We actually have seen less of a reliance from the transfer portal and seeing more of that like high school developmental talent. So, we're talking about 2 years in a row where USC brings in elite recruiting classes in terms of its USC football team. And they're also getting a lot better in the trenches as well, which was a huge problem a couple of years ago. That shouldn't be a problem anymore. I mean, they brought in Zariah Fisher from Penn State, and he's someone that's obviously going to start in that USC defense. He did pretty good over there at Penn State. But then they also brought in 5-star recruits that are going to play on that defensive line and are going to make an impact right away. Luke Waffle and Jamian Winfield. Those are two guys that are going to start interiorly on the defensive line. The offensive trenches are also going to be improved too with Keon Pepe, another 5-star recruit, big body, maybe not have like the perfect technique by any means. He's going to be really good. And then we talked about the losses of Malachi Lemon as well as Jacoby Lane, but they also brought in 2 really good receivers in Caden Dixon-Wyatt and Ethan Feaster from the high school ranks, very high 4-star recruits. And then, like you mentioned, Jaden Mayava, third team all conference. He was a third team all conference in the Big Ten, which is really impressive given the amount of talent that was at the quarterback position this past season. So I'm actually a touch higher because of everything that I mentioned. I actually had them coming in as my 4th best team. And I think last year was understandable. I think this year is we do see that breakout, and we could see USC playing in the college football playoff.
I think, Jake, you're prefacing next season USC again in the playoff. I have them also at number 5. I think replacing the production of Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane are going to be too massive in the immediate season following that. Tanook Hines obviously is going to be a standout. Terrell Anderson, the 2 other incoming freshmen that you pointed out, Jake, are going to be players to notably watch out for in this receiver group going forward. King Miller, Waymon Jordan, both back in the backfield. Jaden Mayava, entire offensive line. Like, I completely understand USC being a dark horse for the playoff, but I just can't do it. I can't do it yet. I think one more year, Lincoln Riley gets because I feel like if they were going to make a push, for the playoffs this year, they would have gone heavier on the portal. And I think that they didn't go heavier on the portal. I think you would have seen them try to make more notable additions in the portal at key positions, namely receiver. If they added another receiver besides Terrell Anderson in the portal, I think we could have been talking about them as a fringe playoff team. But I think just one more year, USC, Lincoln Riley, and I also think Danton Lynn is going to be, although it is a transition to Gary Patterson at defensive coordinator, I think losing Danton Lynn will show itself at least early on in the season, pick up Gary Patterson's system a little bit. So USC will be right there at the top for years to come, especially if they keep with this model of, recruiting and developing, kind of going against the grain of what we see in college football nowadays. So I'm going to have the Trojans at 5.
Yeah, I just I see what Lincoln Riley's done, and I think he's done a good job with his changing up that defensive identity. And I think that defense is finally going to catch up to really the exciting offense that we've seen from USC over the years from Lincoln Riley. Again, don't know if it's at a point where they're going to be competing with the elites in this conference, but I think USC, has what it takes, to be a top 4 team. But with that, before I jump into our top 5, I was jumping into my number 5. We do have another special guest coming in on the show. One of our co-hosts, Colton of O&O Sports. Buddy, how are you
Colton,
my man.
just hold on before
Oh.
Colton rants. I've probably got like 5 minutes, and I do have to hop. So can I just give you my top 4 real quick, Jake, just to throw those
Please.
on there, and then
Please,
I'll
AT, go ahead.
okay.
Oh yeah, go. Yeah, go.
All right, boys. So, all right,
I'm
I'm gonna throw these because I want to hear. This is the worst part for me to leave because I want to hear Colton rant so bad. I'm definitely gonna watch this back. But I'll throw you. I'll give you 3 hitters on each of these teams. I've got number 4. I've got Michigan sitting there. Kyle Whittingham. I think they've got one of the best staffs. Jason Beck, Jay Hill, fantastic staff. Bryce Underwood, left some to be desired last year. But Andrew Marsh, Smith Snowden, those are some studs. I know you guys are going to talk about them. Number 3, I've got Oregon. Dante Moore, obviously a stud, maybe Heisman contender here. Brandon Finney Jr., DeCarrion Moore's back. He was a freshman last year, wide receiver. He's a stud. I think he'll produce a lot. Number 2, Indiana, Kirk Cignetti. I think that they're great, but just couldn't power rate them number 1. I think my number 1, it's Ohio State. I think it's clear when you got Bo Jackson, Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith all returning on that offense, it's hard to find anyone else for me that's better than them. So those are incredibly quick hitters. I know Indiana loses Fernando Mendoza, but they gain Josh Hoover, keep around some good guys like Charles Becker. That's what I got for my top 4. So I'm just throwing that out there for you. And I'll let Colton get to his Nebraska rant now. So
Okay. First of all, am I loud and clear? Can we?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you are.
great.
You are
Sound
loud and
good?
clear.
All right. First of all, AT, good top 4. Awesome,
Thank you, man.
Awesome stuff.
I'll see
Good
you.
to see you. Good to see you. I will start. I won't even start with the obvious. First of all, Jake, Penn State at 12.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know. I don't know what Penn State's going to go 8-4. They're not going to go 10-2. Penn State's going to go 8-4. They're going to look good doing it. They're going to be good on defense.
Yeah,
D'Anton
probably.
Lynn is a great defensive coordinator. Rocco Beck. If we're talking ceilings and floors, Penn State might have the highest floor of any offense in the Big Ten this year, just because of the implementation of that Iowa State offense. I heard you guys talk about roster talent. And how if you're expecting Iowa State to come in and play in the Big Ten, you're not going to be super high on them. I understand that, but this is still a vastly more talented roster than Iowa State had last year, even with the people that left. I still think they compete towards the top. I don't think they win the Big Ten. I don't see them doing that this year. I would have them power rated at this point above USC, just because I like D'Anton Lynn to Gary Patterson. Jaden Mayava loses his
Colin's gonna make me throw
three
up.
of his 4 top targets. I love Jaden Mayava. I think he's a better quarterback than Rocco Becht. Jaden Mayava also loses his 3 of his top 4 targets, including a safety blanket tight end, Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon, who are 2 arguably top. One is inarguably a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. The other is top 3 rounds easily. When you lose talent like that, they're going to have it in Southern California naturally, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. I would have Penn State vastly higher just because of, if you look at the national championship last game, Indiana, Miami, what were those 2 teams the best at? Offensive and defensive line. I think Penn State's offensive and defensive line are still awesome. Obviously, they lose Denai Dennis Sutton. They lose Zane Durant. It's a new regime, so there obviously is more room for error there, but D'Anton Lynn, in my opinion, is a step up from Jim Knowles. I think Jim Knowles, given 2 or 3 years, would have made it pretty good, but obviously wasn't afforded that much time. Now, with that being said, sorry.
Here we go.
We talked about Reed, you specifically, you talked about the offensive identity at Nebraska. What was Nebraska's offensive identity last year?
It's spam Emmett Johnson.
And Dylan Raiola. The past 2 years of offense at Nebraska has been getting Dylan Raiola opportunity to become an NFL player. Obviously, when you lose Dylan Raiola in the middle of the season, you get derailed. Well, what was Nebraska's biggest issue this year outside of Dylan Raiola getting injured?
They couldn't stop a nosebleed on defense.
Correct. They were tiny and underdeveloped and young on the defensive line. You bring in Rob Arch, like Reed talked about, top 10 coordinator at the group of 5 level. San Diego State was a top 15 defense last year. great at stopping the run. You talked about the 4-2-5, notably in the portal. They don't get uber talented on defensive line, but what do? They address the issue. They get bigger on defensive line. Second of all, we talked about offensive identity. I just said Dylan Raiola was Nebraska's offensive identity. You had Emmett Johnson, of course, was an almost all-American running back, probably a top or a day 2 NFL draft pick. You can say that. I would have no issue with you saying that. My thing is, if we're talking about offensive identity in year 4 under Matt Rule, we talked about Dana Holgorsen. We have not seen a Dana Holgorsen offense so far in his time at Nebraska. We have seen a revamped Marcus Satterfield offense with more slants. When you brought Dylan Raiola in, and there's no issue with bringing in a 5-star quarterback, everybody says yes to that. You cater to him, especially if you're a team like Nebraska, who's not Georgia resources, who's not Ohio State resources. 100%, I understand. Dylan Raiola is a great quarterback. I think the move to Oregon was the best possible decision he could have ever made in his life, and I think it shows a level of maturity for him specifically that I did not think he had prior. With that being said, if we're talking about offensive identity next year, who? Let me ask, what system did UNLV have with Anthony Calandri last year?
Spread pro.
Correct. Who ran one of the best spread pro offenses other than Indiana, obviously, in the country? I'll go ahead and answer for you. Georgia Tech. You know who Nebraska got from Georgia Tech? Their offensive line coach, Geep Wade. It might be Jeep. I don't know. I can't remember. Jeep Wade. One of the best offensive line coaches, one of the best offensive lines in the country. They bring him in. They also bring in a hell of a ton of snaps from the Power 4 in to bolster the offensive line, which was pretty good anyways. If you take out the 2 tackles, if you take out pass pro, running the ball was already a very good offensive line. You keep intact a very good offensive line. You add a ton of snaps. You add one of the better offensive line coaches in the sport in Jeep Wade. You establish Anthony Calandria. You bring him in. They ran a great pro spread offense. Jeep Wade ran a good, one of the best pro spread offenses in the country. That is the offensive identity. That is what Dana Holgorsen's modern offense has looked like. Tons of RPOs, we are now going to see a Dana Holgorsen offense. I know we might be very bearish on Dana Holgorsen so far. I am also a wait and see kind of guy, but to think, because the offense wasn't great after Dylan Raiola, who was the focal point of the offense last year, that he is not a good offensive coordinator, I would argue that is untrue. I think the offensive identity shifts to the pro spread. You bring in one of the best pro spread offenses in the quarterbacks in the group of 5. You bring in, like I said, the offensive line coach. You also have good running backs behind Emmett Johnson that didn't get a ton of burn. We saw it wasn't Ives, it was somebody else in the bowl game for Nebraska who looked very, very good. I don't think you're short of talent at you're not short of talent at running back. You also bring in Quasi Gilmer, which I believe Reed talked about. You bring in Anthony Black of Iowa State at guard to replace I forget his name. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. The offensive identity.
Oh no. He was cutting a good promo.
Yeah. So while we're gonna figure out if Colton regains the connectivity or not, I know this is probably a little bit more directed at me because I was the lowest on Nebraska. So how I rank my teams before I finish my official spring rankings that you guys are gonna see towards the end of the week is that this is more of a I take the helmet to the side, take the logo to the side, and take a look at production gain versus production loss, with the exception of maybe a handful of freshmen that have a really good chance of contributing right away. The defensive line, I will acknowledge that they did get bigger, and that was one of the chief problems, and that was very evident when we were watching college football. The Redzone live stream was Nebraska looked smaller. But the thing in terms of when I looked at Nebraska from a baseline perspective is that while Nebraska's defensive line, what they brought in the transfer portal, they are bigger guys. At the same time, what I will say about this Nebraska football team, Colton's back. We love to see it.
Hello.
Is that hi, welcome back.
Okay, I don't know
What
what
I will
happened.
say about this Nebraska football team is while they are bigger on the defensive line of scrimmage, when I was looking at their stats, these were guys that were super productive. So again, on paper, they should be better and they look better. Is that they have to prove it. And at this time,
Absolutely.
teams like Northwestern, Illinois, Washington, they seem like more proven commodities than Nebraska at this point. But I do acknowledge that Nebraska does have pieces in place where they can surpass those three teams I talked about that look like more proven commodities at this time.
I absolutely agree. There are a lot of unproven guys. But the thing is, when we're talking about the size differential, I mean, we're talking linebackers on the edge. We're talking small edge rushers at defensive tackle. This is the kind of changes we're seeing implemented. We're bringing in a number of guys. Hold on, give me 1 second.
Dude, we're gonna cut this bit of just Colton talking about Nebraska, and we're gonna like pin it to every page possible.
Multiple shorts for sure.
Absolutely, go for it. Okay, I'm back. So we're not talking about a shift on defensive line. We're talking about a complete re-identification. I think one of our biggest defensive linemen last year was 275 pounds. That's terrible, and that's the reason why we sucked on defensive line, as we saw against Penn State, as we saw against Iowa. That was the biggest reason, and we had a defensive coordinator who had no defensive coordinator experience prior to working at Nebraska. We now bring in one of the best defensive coordinators, like I said, from the Group of Five level. So I understand why some people would be, I guess, less. I say some people. Why you gentlemen here would have him or have us outside of the top 10, outside of the top half. I think Nebraska is easily a 6 or 7 win team in 2026, just because of the floor. Like if we could redo it, like I was about to say before, whatever, a comet hit my satellite and I lost signal somehow. Is if we could redo it, 100%. This is the method we should have gone down. Like you can't say no to Dylan Raiola when he says, "Hey, I want to come to Nebraska." You can't do it. But for both parties, it was not the best timing. It was not the best. Nebraska's not in a place where we can develop a quarterback into an NFL player.
Yeah.
It's just not happening. And right now, what Matt Rule is doing in year 4, which he should have been doing in year 1, is lower or heightening the floor at Nebraska, which he's now doing by establishing a clear identity, both offensively and defensively. And I think we see it take shape as soon as year 1. This is not me saying, year 4. I guess year 1 with the new defensive coordinator, the new defensive staff, the new hires on offense, and the first year without Dylan Raiola in the modern Matt Rule at Nebraska atmosphere. This is the first year outside of that, other than year 1, which was just a complete overhaul. And I don't think this was last year. I didn't say Nebraska was a 10-win team because Nebraska wasn't a 10-win team. If you knew anything about the roster, the coaching staff, it was just not going to happen that way. I'm not saying that this year. What I am saying is that they're going to be a Big Ten team more so than we have a few talented guys and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I get it. And that's not me having them at 11. That's not indicative of, I don't think there's any shot of Nebraska going to the bowl game. And that's why I don't have them as a record. But yeah, I mean, I just have to see it to believe it at this point. But I mean, that's the beautiful thing about making predictions in March. We going to see, that's for sure. And I appreciate you coming by. Even
Absolutely.
if it's, I don't get to see that beautiful face of yours like on camera here tonight.
Yeah, I was listening at work. I heard all the slanders comments, and I had to do something about it. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for bringing me on, though.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You have a good rest of your night. All right.
Y'all too.
Bye, Colton.
See ya. Oh,
You never disappoints.
Yeah, incredible co-host, and make sure you go follow him over at O&O Sports. That's his Twitter, and that's his YouTube. That being said, ready to finish up this list, my man. We're having some very spirited discussions. I know for the last few teams, we're going to have some spirited discussions because my number 5, this is definitely going to be lower than consensus. I actually did have Indiana at number 5, and that's certainly not a knock on Kirk Cinetti. I mean, Kirk Cinetti is arguably the best coach in this conference. If you want to say Ryan Day is the best coach, if you want to say Kirk Cinetti is the best coach in this conference, there would not be too much pushback from me. This is a roster last year that was outside the top 70 in roster composite, and they're replacing 10 NFL players. That's a lot of talent for any program to replace. And I just don't know if what we saw from Indiana is that, I guess, the ceiling of Indiana, is that a one-year wonder, or is that something to expect from here on out? And I think they bring in incredible football players. I think they, Josh Hoover or Nick Marsh, like that is going to be an incredible connection to watch. That's going to be one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in this conference. And I think Joe Brunner is a very good at as well on the offensive line. To pair with Carter Smith, who's still coming back. Tyree Tucker is coming back as well on the defensive line. And Rajay Hardy, he was a second-team All-Big Ten linebacker last year for this team. He's also back as well. But again, I mean, it's a laundry list of guys that they're going to have to try to replace. Fernando Mendoza, Omar Cooper, D'Angelo Pons, Elijah Surratt. I mean, there's a lot of dudes that Indiana's going to have to replace. But I'm not knocking Kirk Cinetti. I'm not downing him one bit. It's just, again, it's a ton of talent for any team to replace. And I'm just curious to see how that's handled now that some of the players that he brought from James Madison, they're also starting to graduate as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of turnover. Completely agree with that. Can't deny that. But I mean, defending national champions, I got to see it to believe it. I got to see him lose before I start knocking him. Just to jump to it, Indiana's my number 1 team solely because of that. I got to see it to believe it. I think Josh Hoover has arguably one of the highest ceilings of any quarterback in this conference. As if he can reduce his not his touchdowns, definitely do not reduce his touchdowns. If he can reduce his interceptions to at least half of what he had in last season, he had 13. I forget the stat. I think his last 3 years as a starter, it's been like 34 interceptions. If I want to say, I can't remember the number, but if he can reduce that number even by 5 or 6, they're going to be a competitive team without a doubt. Turbo Richard comes in at running back, going to be rotating with probably Kobe Martin from the looks of it. The redshirt freshman, Toby Richard, comes in from Boston College, over 700 yards on the ground, 9 touchdowns. Charlie Becker is back at receiver along with Nick Marsh, as you pointed out. And Shaz Preston, I think, is an underrated addition from Tulane, over 700 yards, 4 touchdowns on 44 catches for the Green Wave last year. Offensive line, going to be the standout of this offense, without a doubt. Carter Smith, offensive lineman of the year in the Big Ten, I believe. It's that the award. He was the best offensive lineman in the league, period, without a doubt. Carter Smith at left tackle. Joe Bruner is going to be a standout. He probably is going to play left guard, one of the guards, most likely. Aside, he might fill in at center. They might just rotate Pat Coogan heading out at center. But yeah, the biggest turnover is probably going to be defensive line in my eyes. Stephen Daly and Mikhail Kamara are 2 huge holes to fill on the defensive line. But Tyree Tucker, like you said, does come back to play the nose tackle position. So I think their additions, probably the most notable defensively, is going to be Toby Osunsami for me. Kansas State. He only played in 6 games last season, but he has very high upside potential to replicate what he's done in years past at Kansas State. Was a 4-star edge rusher out of the portal. So I'm excited about Indiana. I like that Cignetti, is continuing to, just basically redefine what college football is. Essentially, he's taken the world by storm. I'm not going to beat the bush, but I got to see it to believe it with Indiana. That's plain and simple for me.
Yeah, and I completely understand that resentment. Yeah, I just curious with Indiana is going to be a really interesting test case because we haven't seen a team like Indiana ever before, and we haven't seen a program like Indiana before at this level. And so, if it's something that could be maintained long term, I mean, they will never be doubted ever again. If what, especially with what they did this year,
Yeah.
if that's going to be replicated, like from last year. But again, it's 10 NFL guys that you're going to replace. It's a lot of talent and a lot of guys are going to need to step up. And for me, when I'm looking at this top three and this top four, when he gets into his top five in this conference, I feel like I'm splitting hairs here. It's just little things like that where I have maybe a tad more questions about Indiana than the top three that I have on this list. But I know that you still have your number 4 wide but naked open though. You're obviously not as high on this next team than you are Indiana, and no one's going to be touching Indiana, at least on your list. So who comes in after we had USC come as our number 5 team in the Big Ten?
Yeah, it's going to be the redefined Michigan Wolverines. Kyle Whittingham coming in. Jason Beck also coming in. Jay Hill. I feel like this is going to be a new era of Michigan football. Kyle Whittingham might not be there forever, but I feel like the imprint that he's going to leave on the program will be there for the long term. Obviously, Bryce Underwood comes back at quarterback. Jordan Marshall back at running back. They do lose Justice Haynes to Georgia Tech, but Savion Hitter comes in at running back, was the top prospect at the position in this past cycle, alongside Taylor Tatum, who was a previous 4-star prospect, comes in from Oklahoma. Didn't get a lot of game time there, but has obviously the upside of a 4-star prospect. Andrew Marsh is back at receiver. Kendrick Bell back at receiver. They add Jamie French from Texas, who has a lot of upside. Only played in 3 games last season, dealt with some injuries, but has obviously a high upside there as well. Travis Johnson and Brady Marquise, I think that's how you pronounce that, 2 4-star prospects coming in as well at receiver. They had JJ Buchanan, who is a high upside tight end. He's inserted in this offense as well. Offensive line, obviously, Michigan will always have a great offensive line. They add, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the rest of that name, Houston at center from Nebraska. He will take over for Greg Crippen, leading that offensive line unit. Derek Moore is a hole to fill on the defensive line, but John Henry Daly, obviously top edge rusher in the portal, comes in from Utah, and Jonah Wayale also joins from Utah as well. ASC Moa from Michigan State joins the linebacker group. Max Alford from BYU was a high production player for the Cougars last season. Smith Snowden is a notable addition on the back end of the defense. I think Michigan, if their cards fall in all in the right places, they're a playoff team. And I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team in my eyes. I think they definitely could compete for it though. They're definitely going to be in the top 4 of the Big Ten next season.
Yeah, and I was willing to take it a step further, obviously, because I had Michigan as my number 3 team.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a lot of the players that they added, so I'm not going to talk about them again because they've already been mentioned. I think really the biggest improvement is not only is Michigan, they have a talented roster year in and year out, but the biggest thing that's been holding them back was that we saw Sharon Moore hold this program back over the last couple of years. I know it was a feel-good story for a little bit, coming in as an interim coach for Jim Harbaugh with all the tumultuous suspensions that he was dealing with. He wins a big game on national television, and he starts crying and just giving his thanks to everybody. It was a feel-good story for a while, but I think in retrospect, we saw that Sharon Moore held this program back when he was the head man in the long term. And now that Kyle Whittingham is here, like you mentioned, he's probably not going to be here for long, right? He's one of the older coaches in the FBS and not just in the Big Ten, but he is at least a quintessential adult in the room, which is, I think, better than what you could say what they had at the head coaching position the last couple of years. A couple of interesting names that haven't been mentioned, but I think are going to be fascinating players to watch. Nathaniel Sterling, transfer from North Dakota State. team that finished undefeated in the regular season in the FCS. You had 3 interceptions last year, 75 tackles. A captain of a defense, and that's the type of player that they brought in as well to help turn this culture around. On top of like a Chris Bracey and a Max Alford, and a tight end Davis, who was a high 4-star recruit in this recruiting class as well. So I mean, the defense is going to be good, and they are going to have at least adequate coaching. Worst case scenario, which has me high on this Michigan team, but not as high as the next team on this list, or at least based on our boy AT before he had to dip. I'm wondering where you have him, but I know AT had them at number 3. And I'm just curious if that was what you had as well, or if you were a touch higher on this Oregon football team.
Yeah, I also have Oregon at 3. The only knock I give them, because of the amount of production that they do bring back and the portal additions that they did make, the only knock I have on them is that they're replacing both coordinators. If they weren't replacing both coordinators, they arguably would be in my number 1 discussion. But because they are doing that, I got to put them at 3. Dante Moore, we already talked about it, comes back at quarterback, Heisman contender potentially. Jordan Davison, back at running back, was a true freshman last year, so he's going to be there for a hot minute. De'Aaron Hill Jr. also back there in the backfield. They had Simeon Price from Colorado, who, again, didn't get a lot of burn with the Buffaloes, but I think has some upside potential to just backfill the room. DeCorian Moore, Jeremiah McClain, 2 notable receivers are back. Iverson Hooks is going to be a name to look out for. Comes in from UAB, nearly 1,000 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns for the Blazers last season. He's going to be a name to really look out for. And Evan Stewart is also back. He missed the entire season last year due to injury. He is also back in this receiver group. Kenyon Sadiq is going to be a huge hole to fill at tight end, but they add Andrew Olesh, a 4-star recruit, previously transferred in from Penn State, and Kendra Harrison, 5-star prospect, also added at the tight end level. Also, Jamari Johnson returns from the roster last season. They return a good chunk of the offensive line. They return all 4 of their main starters on the defensive line. A good chunk of their linebacker group is back, aside from Bryce Betcher, who was the leader of the defense. DB Thieneman is out the door, but Brandon Finney Jr. was a top corner last season. He is back. Jet Washington, 4-star prospect, is committed. Coy Parrish is added from Minnesota. We highlighted him earlier and how important he was to that Minnesota team. He comes in. Aaron Scott Jr., previously 5-star prospect at defensive back, joins in from Ohio State. So not to try to steal your thunder, Jake, but this Oregon team is going to be right back where they were last season. I hate to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with what you were saying, which is why I had them like a touch higher at number 2. I think there was a real case for them to be at number 1, but really the difference was one team wasn't completely decimated in terms of their coordinator core, and one was, with 2 of their coordinators becoming head coaches. And we love that for both Will Stein and for Tosh Poi. Very excited to see what they do as they continue their coaching career. But they kept 6 all conference guys that were on the all Big Ten list last year. They're back, and that doesn't even somehow include Dante Moore, which I thought was really I was surprised as you. I thought with how good Dante Moore's season was last season and how he was getting hyped to be, a top 5 pick, we would see him on that Big Ten list. He actually wasn't, which again, I was really surprised by that. So they have one of the best quarterbacks coming back. They have a ton of talent coming back, both in the high school ranks. They got Coy Parrish. I mean, there's not a lot to say here that you didn't already say, Reed. But I mean, this Oregon football team, I mean, it's going to have a lot to say in terms of, who's going to win that Big Ten title. And I don't think that they play Ohio State. So they dodge them to an interesting scheduling wrinkle, if I'm not mistaken. So, Oregon does have a navigable path.
Week 10 at Ohio State.
Oh, never mind.
They actually go back to back Week 10 at Ohio State, Week 11 home to Michigan.
Yeah, so I mean, those 2 games are gonna determine whether Oregon makes the CFP or even makes it to the Big Ten championship. But I mean, either way, we're gonna have a lot to say, even as I completely forget about their schedule for a split second. But I don't think they're as good as the last team on this list. And we're saving the best for last. It's the Ohio State Buckeyes. They come in as number 1 for me. Ryan Day, he is a top 5 head coach in college football. And if you wanted him as your number one coach, I mean, not a ton of pushback from me. They got Julian Sayin. He's back. Bo Jackson is also back. They returned multiple offensive linemen that were on this on that all Big Ten list is also back as well. And then how about the talent that they added in the transfer portal too? Hunter Welching, starting tight end for Northwestern. Yeah. He's on this team. Clay Redzone and James Smith are both coming to Ohio State as well. The safeties. I mean, you're talking about having to replace Caleb Downs, Earl Little Jr. and Terry Moore as your as your safeties in the back end. That's not a bad way to replace, arguably the best defender in college football. Devin McClain is going to be an interesting wide receiver piece coming in from UTSA. Christian Allegro, he is just a menace of a human being. He played, I'm pretty sure, with a broken arm or a broken hand when Wisconsin was playing Ohio State last year. Still played. He didn't complain. He's just the quintessential lunch pail guy. Glue guy, sneaky athletic, just absolutely plays the game the right way. That's Christian Allegro in a nutshell. And all of this, and I haven't even talked about the greatest receiver in college football right now, Jeremiah Smith, who has a true freshman. Probably if he declared after his true freshman year for the NFL, he would have been a first-round pick. And the fact that they have at least one more year with him is a bless, not only for Ohio State, but it's a blessing for college football as a whole to watch him play the game. It's just, he has been one of my favorite players to watch, and I'm excited to see what he can do as he continues to build that connection with Julian Sayin as he enters his second year as a starting quarterback.
Yeah, and we didn't even mention that the turnover at wide receiver coach with Brian Hartline going to South Florida. Cortez Hankton, arguably the second best receiver coach in the country from LSU, comes in, just casually fills in that wide receiver coaching spot. A notable change that you didn't mention, but I'm kind of glad you didn't, because I wanted to talk about it, was Arthur Smith coming in as the new offensive coordinator. Now, I'm not going to talk about my personal feelings about Arthur Smith, but I think it will take some getting used to for Ohio State fans watching an Arthur Smith led offense. If you solely just go look back at his offensive production as a head coach or offensive coordinator in his past 6 years in the NFL, it's nothing that notably stands out to you. Just want to preface that. But you have a top 5 quarterback in the sport, a top 10 running back in the sport, the number 1 receiver in the sport, another top 15 to 10 receiver, and Brandon Inniss also coming back. You add the best receiver in the class, in the recruiting class, Chris Henry Jr., who is going to be another freak at Ohio State at receiver. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to overlook Ohio State, which I did in my rankings, but I mean, you easily could interchange Indiana, Ohio State, in my opinion, but it's just tough right now for Ohio State. I just can't get behind Arthur Smith at the moment, but then they'll go play. Who do they play week 1? I don't even know. Oh, they'll go play Texas, right? They have Texas on their schedule. They'll go play Texas in week 2, and they'll just shut me up. They'll put up like a 40 spot or something. So
yeah, and we'll see if because we have seen this before, where we've seen NFL coaches who have underperformed, go to Ohio State, and then they end up killing it at Ohio State. Matt Patricia last year was a perfect example of that. I know last year for me around this time, I had questions about how Matt Patricia is going to do as a new defensive coordinator trying to replace Jim Knowles. Granted, this was after Jim Knowles spent more of it than 1 year at Ohio State, which is really important because usually a year 1 Jim Knowles defense doesn't look too great. Year 2 and beyond, it's a smooth running machine. But Matt Patricia comes in and he does an excellent job, and we could see that too. The only downside for Arthur Smith is that he can't somehow bring Jonnu Smith over. I know that he somehow has an obsession
or Kenneth Gainwell,
or like him as well. I know that we have seen at least a couple of former NBA players trying to get college basketball eligibility. Haven't seen that yet in college football. I'm not saying that they should try it, But that's really the biggest downside for Offer Smith taking this job. He can't take John or Smith with him. So, we'll pour one out for him there.
Mainstay
But
of
I
the
think with
offense.
the weapons that he's going to have, I'm sure he's going to be just fine.
Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt.
So, Reed, I don't know how we pulled it off alongside AT, because I know AT had to leave a little early, but we made it. We made it for the entirety of the Big Ten conference. Before we go ahead and sign off here tonight, man, any fascinating thoughts about this Big Ten before we sign off for the masses?
Penn State. I'm telling you. Except it'll all blow up in my face. We'll lose to like Temple in week 2. So,
I mean that's a really intriguing road game. Shout out to Temple, by the way.
Road game.
They have the practice going on the road. It's still like somewhat notable, right? But
yes,
no, it's going to be fascinating. Shout out to Temple being able to get big time games in their home stadium. They did this with Oklahoma last year, but now you get another really big brand in Penn State coming into your building, and it's an in-state opponent. So I'm sure that's going to be a really good time for for both teams involved. Penn State, I know they travel pretty well, and they don't have to travel too far. Philadelphia being not too far away, at least compared to some of their other Big Ten opponents. So, hey, we're going to go ahead and sign off here for tonight. But, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you. The fact that it is in the middle of March and you sat down and listened to 2.5 hours of the silky smooth voice of Reed, of AT, and we even got a little sprinkle of Colton in there as well, which I deeply appreciate. So, with that being said, hopefully you guys are all out there having a good night. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button as well as hit that subscribe button as well. With that, this is Jacob College Football Red Zone signing off. Hope you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.